The night my husband asked for permission to sleep with other women, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just disappeared. Elena Voss thought loyalty meant something. 3 years of sacrifice, of making herself smaller, of being the perfect wife, all shattered in one casual conversation. But when she locked eyes with Luca Moretti across a crowded Manhattan ballroom, everything changed. He was dangerous, powerful, untouchable, and he saw her when no one else did. This is the story of how I stopped being invisible. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The apartment smelled like burnt coffee and broken promises. Elena Voss stood at the kitchen counter, her fingers wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug that had been a wedding gift from Adrian's mother. The irony wasn't lost on her. 3 years later, both the mug and the marriage were cracked beyond repair, held together only by habit and the fear of what came next. Elena, are you even listening to me? Adrian's voice cut through the fog of her thoughts, sharp and impatient. He sat at their small dining table, laptop open, barely glancing up from whatever email had captured his attention. His tie was loosened, his shirt wrinkled from a long day at the tech startup where he worked 60-hour weeks chasing the next funding round. I'm listening, Elena said quietly, though she wasn't sure that was true anymore. These days she felt like she was underwater, hearing everything through layers of distance and displacement. Good, because I need you to understand that this isn't about you. Adrian finally looked up, his expression somewhere between earnest and exasperated, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. It's about us, about keeping things fresh, exciting. Elena set down the mug carefully, afraid that if she moved too quickly, something inside her might shatter. You want an open marriage. I want us to be honest about what we need. Adrian leaned back in his chair, running a hand through the hair that was already thinning at 29. We're young, Elena. We got married too fast. I love you, but I'm not ready to close myself off to experiences. Experiences. The word hung in the air like smoke. What about what I need? Elena heard herself ask, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Adrian blinked, genuinely confused by the question. What do you mean? This benefits both of us. You'd have the same freedom. Freedom. As if she'd been asking for it. As if she'd been the one feeling trapped. Elena looked at her husband, really looked at him, and realized she was seeing a stranger. When had that happened? When had the man who'd promised to build a life with her become someone who saw her as an obstacle to overcome, a problem to be solved with logic and negotiation? I need to get ready for work, she said instead of answering. We're not done talking about this. I know. Elena walked past him toward their bedroom, each step measured and deliberate. But I can't be late. The Castellano event starts at 7. Right, your little catering gig. Adrian's tone dismissed 3 years of her climbing from server to event coordinator, 3 years of early mornings and aching feet and smiling at people who looked through her like she was furniture. Elena, when are you going to take a real job seriously? My company is hiring. I said I can't be late. She closed the bedroom door before he could respond, leaning against it and finally allowing herself to breathe. The apartment was too small for secrets, too cramped for the kind of privacy that might have let them grow apart gracefully instead of this, whatever this was. 900 square feet in Brooklyn, split between two people who barely knew each other anymore. Elena caught her reflection in the mirror above their dresser. 26 years old, honey blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, blue eyes that used to sparkle with something, hope maybe, or ambition, now just looked tired. She'd lost weight over the past year, not intentionally, just the slow erosion of someone who forgot to eat because food required energy she didn't have. When had she become so small? The black dress she wore for events hung in the closet, pressed and ready. Elena changed mechanically, zipping herself into the uniform of invisibility. Servers weren't supposed to stand out. They were supposed to blend into the background, anticipate needs before they were spoken, exist only in service to people who would never remember their faces. She was very good at being invisible. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marissa, her supervisor at Prestige Events, running behind. Need you to handle setup solo. Castellano Penthouse. Client list is VVIP, no mistakes. Elena's stomach tightened. The The Castellano events were legendary in their industry. Old money, real power, the kind of people who appeared in the Times business section and town and country spreads. One mistake at a Castellano party could end a career before it started. She typed back, "On it." Adrian was still at the table when she emerged, now on a phone call, laughing at something his colleague said. He waved absently as she gathered her bag and coat, not bothering to cover the phone. Elena paused at the door, waiting for something, an acknowledgement, a goodbye, anything that suggested she mattered. Nothing came. She left. The subway ride from Brooklyn to Manhattan gave Elena 43 minutes to build her armor. She'd learned early in this industry that survival required transformation. The girl who married Adrian Voss, who believed in partnership and shared dreams, had to disappear the moment she clocked in. In her place came Elena, the event coordinator, efficient, pleasant, invisible. A ghost in black dress and sensible heels, moving through spaces she'd never be invited to as a guest. The train rattled through the tunnel, packed with evening commuters. Elena stood pressed against the door, watching the darkness flash by between stations. Somewhere in that darkness was the girl she used to be, the one who'd graduated top of her class in design school, who'd had portfolios full of ambitious concepts for boutique hotels and restaurant spaces. That girl had dreams. This Elena just had bills. Her phone buzzed again. This time, Adrian. Think about it. Really think. This could save us. She didn't respond. At 59th Street, Elena emerged into a different world. Manhattan in early evening glittered like a promise, all glass and steel and possibility if you had the right last name or bank account. The Castellano penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building on Fifth Avenue, overlooking Central Park. Elena had worked dozens of events in spaces like this, each one a glimpse into lives she'd never touch. The service entrance led to a private elevator. Elena badged in, watching the numbers climb. 37, 38, 39, 40. The doors opened onto a staging area where caterers, florists, and technicians moved in practiced choreography. Crystal chandeliers threw rainbow prisms across marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the park like a living painting. Elena, thank God! Marcus, the head caterer, rushed over with a clipboard. Marissa's stuck in traffic. The florist delivered wrong arrangements, and the Castellanos just added 12 people to the guest list. We're completely underwater. Elena slipped into work mode, her personal crisis shelved with practiced ease. Show me what we have. The next 2 hours blurred into controlled chaos. Elena coordinated with the kitchen, repositioned seating arrangements, personally inspected each place setting for the 140 guests who would begin arriving at 7. This was what she was good at, creating perfection for other people, making sure every detail aligned so seamlessly that no one noticed the work involved. By 6:45, the penthouse had transformed into something out of a magazine spread. White orchids cascaded from centerpieces, champagne chilled in silver buckets, a string quartet tuned instruments in the corner. Everything perfect, everything ready. You're a miracle worker, Marcus said, squeezing her shoulder. Positions, everyone. Guests arriving in 10. Elena took her spot near the entrance, ready to greet and direct as needed. She smoothed her dress, checked her appearance in one of the ornate mirrors lining the hallway. Professional, pleasant, invisible. The first guests arrived in a wave of designer perfume and old money confidence. Elena smiled and directed them toward cocktails, her voice warm and forgettable. She recognized faces from newspapers and charity galas. A federal judge, a museum director, the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. They moved past her without acknowledgement, as expected. She was furniture. She was wallpaper. She was nothing. An hour into the event, Elena circulated through the crowd with champagne, refilling glasses and clearing empties with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Conversations swirled around her, mergers and acquisitions, summer homes in the Hamptons, children at Exeter and Andover. Different worlds, different problems. She was clearing glasses from a side table when she felt it. The shift in the room was subtle but unmistakable, like air pressure changing before a storm. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they reorganized themselves around a new center of gravity. Elena looked up and saw him. Luca Moretti moved through the crowd the way sharks move through water. with absolute certainty that everything around him existed only in relation to his presence. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that had definitely been tailored on Savile Row, he commanded space without effort. Dark hair, sharp jaw, eyes that missed nothing. Elena knew who he was. Everyone did. Moretti Holdings owned half the real estate in Manhattan, with fingers in everything from luxury hotels to private equity. But it was the rumors that made Luca Moretti truly dangerous. Whispers about connections that went deeper than boardrooms, about problems that got solved quietly and permanently. He was talking to Gregory Castellano, their host, but his gaze swept the room with the assessment of someone who cataloged threats and opportunities in the same glance. Elena told herself to look away, to move on to the next table, to remember her place. She didn't. Instead, for one reckless second, she stared. And Luca Moretti looked directly at her. The world didn't stop. Music continued, conversations flowed, champagne bubbled in crystal flutes, but something shifted in that moment. Some fundamental rearrangement of reality that Elena felt in her bones. His eyes were dark, unreadable, assessing her with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable. It didn't. For the first time in 3 years, someone saw her. Really saw her. Then the moment broke. Luca's attention returned to Castellano, and Elena forced herself to move, to breathe, to remember she was working. But her hand shook slightly as she set down the tray of glasses, and her heart hammered against her ribs. "Careful there." Elena spun. A woman in her 50s, dripping in diamonds and disapproval, pointed at the champagne Elena had nearly spilled. "These dresses cost more than you make in a year, dear." "My apologies, ma'am." Elena steadied the tray, face burning. "It won't happen again." The woman sniffed and turned back to her companion, already forgetting Elena existed. Just another piece of incompetent help. Elena retreated toward the kitchen, needing a moment to collect herself. This was ridiculous. She'd served hundreds of events, encountered countless powerful people, and never once let it rattle her. What was different about tonight? About him? She was refilling her tray when Marcus appeared, looking stressed. "We have a situation. Mrs. Castellano wants the dessert course moved up an hour, which means we need to completely reorganize the service schedule. Can you handle coordinating with the quartet? They need to adjust their timing." "Of course." Elena set down the champagne and headed for the musicians, grateful for the distraction. The next hour passed in a blur of reorganization. Elena moved through the crowd, invisible again, making adjustments that kept the evening flowing seamlessly. She avoided looking toward where she'd last seen Luca Moretti, afraid of what might happen if their eyes met again. But she felt him. Every time she crossed the main room, awareness prickled along her spine, a sixth sense that tracked his location even when she couldn't see him. It was almost 10 when disaster struck. Elena was carrying a tray of delicate chocolate desserts toward the main dining area when someone backed into her path without looking. She twisted to avoid the collision, overcompensated, and felt herself falling. The tray tilted. 8 parfait glasses filled with artfully arranged chocolate mousse, raspberry coulis, and gold leaf began their inevitable descent toward the white marble floor. This was it. Career over. Reputation destroyed. 3 years of building credibility, gone in. Strong hands caught her waist, steadying her instantly. The tray remained level, not a single glass disturbed. Elena gasped, suddenly aware of the solid warmth at her back, the expensive cologne that smelled like cedar and power. "Careful." The voice was low, measured, with the faintest trace of an Italian accent smoothed by years of American education. Elena didn't need to turn around to know who'd caught her. Her entire body knew. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely steady. Luca Moretti released her but didn't step back immediately. Elena turned, tray still balanced, and found herself looking up into eyes that were even more devastating up close. Dark brown, almost black, framed by thick lashes that should have softened his face but somehow made it more dangerous. "You're Elena." It wasn't a question. Her mind went blank. How did you?" I asked. His gaze dropped to the name tag pinned to her dress, and Elena flushed, feeling foolish. Of course, that's how normal people knew names. "You've been managing this entire event, haven't you? Not your supervisor who left you to handle everything alone." Elena blinked. "You noticed that?" Something that might have been amusement flickered across Luca's face. I notice everything, Elena, especially competence. It's rare. Someone called his name from across the room. A politician Elena recognized from cable news. Luca held up one finger, an easy gesture that somehow conveyed absolute authority. The man waited. You should save that dessert, Luca said, nodding toward her tray, before someone else decides to use you as a collision target. Right, yes. Thank you again for… Luca. Excuse me? Call me Luca. He produced a business card from his jacket pocket, holding it between two fingers. When you're ready to stop being invisible. Elena took the card on reflex, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent electricity racing up her arm. By the time she recovered enough to respond, Luca had already turned away, moving toward the waiting politician with the same commanding presence that parted crowds without effort. Elena looked down at the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, Luca Moretti, CEO, Moretti Holdings. A phone number. Nothing else. When you're ready to stop being invisible. How did he know? How could a stranger see in 5 minutes what her own husband had stopped seeing years ago? The rest of the evening passed in a daze. Elena performed her duties flawlessly, muscle memory carrying her through service, while her mind replayed those few moments over and over. She didn't see Luca again. He left before midnight, a pattern she'd learned was typical of truly powerful people. They arrived when they chose, left when they chose, and the party continued or ended on their whims. By 1 a.m., the last guests had departed. Elena supervised cleanup, checked inventory, and filled out the final reports for Marissa. Marcus pulled her aside before she left. Whatever you did tonight, do it again. He grinned. Mrs. Castellano asked for you specifically for their summer gala. That's 3 months of guaranteed work, Elena. Full coordination, not just service. She should have been thrilled. This was the break she'd been working toward for 3 years. Instead, she just felt numb. That's wonderful, Elena said, meaning it and not meaning it at the same time. The subway ride back to Brooklyn was empty, the car rocking gently through tunnels. Elena sat alone, Luca's business card pressed between her palms like a talisman. She should throw it away. She was married. Unhappily, yes, but married. Taking a card from another man, even for professional reasons, felt like crossing a line. When you're ready to stop being invisible. Her phone buzzed. Adrian. Still up, we should finish our conversation. Elena stared at the message for a long moment, then at the card in her hands. 2 different futures, 2 different versions of herself. One where she went home and had the conversation her husband demanded, where she tried to save a marriage that had been dying by inches for years. One where… What? Where she called a dangerous man she'd spoken to for 30 seconds? Where she pretended that electricity she'd felt was anything other than loneliness and wishful thinking? She was being ridiculous. Elena tucked the card into her purse and got off at her stop. The walk to the apartment took 7 minutes. She climbed 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken again. Unlocked the door to 900 square feet that had never quite felt like home. Adrian was waiting in the living room, still dressed, laptop glowing in the darkness. We need to talk, he said. I know. Elena set down her bag and coat, moving through the familiar motions of returning home. Except it didn't feel like returning. It felt like walking into a cage she'd built herself, one careful compromise at a time. I've been thinking about what I said earlier, Adrian continued, and Elena heard the tone, the one he used when he'd made a decision and was now explaining it to her. An open marriage isn't the right term. What I'm proposing is more of a flexible arrangement. We stay married, we stay committed to our life together, but we acknowledge that monogamy is an outdated social construct that doesn't serve modern relationships. Elena walked to the kitchen and poured herself water, buying time. Have you already slept with someone? The silence that followed told her everything. Elena, just answer the question. She turned, leaning against the counter, and saw the guilt flash across Adrian's face before he could hide it. How long? It doesn't matter. How long? Adrian ran his hand through his hair, the gesture he always made when cornered. 4 months. Her name is Jessica. She's a product manager at work. It's not serious, Elena. That's why I want us to have this conversation, to be honest about… Elena laughed. The sound surprised her, harsh, broken, nothing like her normal voice. You want to be honest? After 4 months of lying? I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you because I knew you wouldn't understand. You're right. I don't understand. Elena set down the water glass carefully, afraid if she held it any longer she might throw it. I don't understand how the man I married, the one who promised to build a life with me, became someone who fucks his coworker for 4 months and then asks permission retroactively. Adrian stood, defensive now. Don't make this into something it's not. Jessica doesn't threaten our marriage. She's just an experience? Elena heard her voice rising and didn't care. Is that what I am too? An experience you're ready to move on from? You're being dramatic. I'm being dramatic. Elena felt something crack open inside her chest. 3 years of swallowed words and diminished needs finally breaking free. I gave up my career plans because you needed to focus on your startup. I moved to this apartment I hate because it was close to your office. I learned to cook your mother's recipes and smile at your colleagues and be the perfect supportive wife, and you think I'm being dramatic? I never asked you to give up anything. You didn't have to ask. The words exploded out of her. I made myself smaller every single day because I thought that's what marriage meant. Partnership, sacrifice, taking turns. Except we never took turns, did we? It was always your career, your needs, your freedom. Adrian's expression hardened. If you're so unhappy, Elena, why didn't you say something? I did. You didn't listen. She laughed again, that broken sound. You still aren't listening. You're just waiting for me to finish so you can explain why I'm wrong. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Elena grabbed her purse, not needing to move, needing air, needing anything other than this conversation in this apartment with this stranger who wore her husband's face. I can't do this right now. Where are you going? Elena, it's 2 a.m. I don't know. Somewhere I can breathe. She was out the door before Adrian could respond, taking the stairs 2 at a time, bursting onto the Brooklyn street like a drowning woman breaking the surface. The night air was cold against her face, sharp and real. Elena walked without direction, her heels clicking against pavement, her breath coming in ragged gasps. 4 months. He'd been cheating for 4 months while she'd been working 60-hour weeks to help pay rent, while she'd been coordinating his mother's birthday party, while she'd been trying to figure out why they felt so distant, and now he wanted her blessing. Elena found herself in a small park, empty at this hour. She sat on a bench and finally let herself cry, not the pretty silent tears of movies, but ugly, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for the marriage that had died without her noticing. She cried for the girl who'd had dreams and ambitions before she'd learned to apologize for taking up space. She cried for 3 years of making herself invisible while her husband had been seeing her just fine and choosing someone else anyway. When the tears finally stopped, Elena felt hollow, empty, like something essential had been carved out of her chest and there was nothing left but air. Her phone buzzed. Multiple messages from Adrian. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You overreact to everything. Come home so we can discuss this like adults. Elena, you're being childish. She almost threw the phone. Instead, she opened her purse and pulled out the business card she'd tucked away hours ago. When you're ready to stop being invisible. Luca Moretti had seen her. In a room full of people, in 30 seconds of conversation, he'd seen what her own husband had stopped seeing years ago. Maybe he saw everyone that way, with that same intensity, that same attention. Maybe it meant nothing, or maybe... Elena pulled out her phone and, before she could talk herself out of it, typed a message to the number on the card. This is Elena, from the Castellano event. You said to call when I was ready to stop being invisible. I think I'm ready. She hit send before fear could stop her. Then she sat in the dark park and waited for her life to change. The response came 3 minutes later. Coffee tomorrow, 10 a.m. Address below. Come alone. Elena stared at the message, her heart pounding. This was insane. She didn't know this man. He was dangerous, powerful, completely out of her league. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. But she was so tired of being rational, so tired of being small, so tired of being invisible. I'll be there, she typed back. Across the city, in a penthouse that overlooked the park Elena couldn't see from her Brooklyn bench, Luca Moretti stood at his window and smiled. He'd been waiting for her to call. Some people he'd learned over 38 years of reading human nature just needed permission to become who they actually were. Elena Voss had been suffocating in a life too small for her. He'd seen it in the way she moved through that party, competent, professional, completely wasted on work that demanded she disappear. She had potential. Raw, unrefined, buried under years of making herself acceptable to people who didn't deserve her. Luca could work with potential. His phone rang. Marcus Rinaldi, his head of security. The preliminary background check is complete. And? Elena Voss, 26, married to Adrian Voss for 3 years. No criminal record. No significant debt beyond student loans. Works for prestige events. Earns $48,000 annually. Graduated top of her class from design school but never pursued the career. No red flags. What about the husband? Papers rustled. Adrian Voss, 29, mid-level employee at a tech startup that's bleeding money. 1 speeding ticket, college DUI. That was expunged. He's been having an affair with a coworker named Jessica Chen for approximately 4 months. Luca's jaw tightened. Does Elena know? Unknown, but based on their apartment's thin walls and the argument our audio picked up an hour ago, I'd say she found out tonight. So that's why she'd finally reached out. Pain and anger made people brave, made them willing to take risks they'd otherwise avoid. Luca understood that. He'd built an empire on understanding what people wanted and what they'd do to get it. Continue monitoring, but keep distance, Luca instructed. I don't want her feeling watched. Understood. Should I prepare security for tomorrow's meeting? The usual, discreet. Luca ended the call and returned his attention to the city spread below him. Elena Voss was about to learn that invisible was a choice, not a fate. And Luca Moretti was very good at helping people make different choices, especially when those choices aligned with his own interests. He'd wanted her the moment he'd seen her in that ballroom, moving with quiet competence while everyone else performed. There was something magnetic about her, something that called to the part of him that appreciated quality when he found it. And Luca Moretti always got what he wanted. Tomorrow, Elena would take the first step. The rest would follow naturally. He smiled again and poured himself scotch, already planning. Back in Brooklyn, Elena finally stood and started walking home. The apartment was dark when she arrived, Adrian already in bed or pretending to be. She showered, washing away the smell of the event and the salt of her tears, then climbed into bed on her side, keeping as much distance as possible. Sleep didn't come. Instead, Elena stared at the ceiling and thought about tomorrow, about coffee with a dangerous man, about what came next. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't know what that would be. For the first time in 3 years, that felt like freedom. Elena woke to an empty bed and the smell of burned toast. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom window, harsh and unforgiving. She'd barely slept 3 hours, her mind cycling through the same thoughts on repeat. Adrian's confession, Luca's card, the message she'd sent at 2 a.m. that now seemed insane in the cold light of day. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Elena wrapped herself in a robe and padded to the kitchen, where she found a note on the counter in Adrian's careless scrawl. Early meeting. We'll talk tonight. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. As if discovering your husband's 4-month affair was something that could be minimized with the right perspective, the right attitude. As if she was the problem for having feelings about it. Elena crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. 9:15. She had 45 minutes before she was supposed to meet Luca Moretti for coffee at an address she'd looked up on her phone, a cafe in Tribeca that had a 3-week waiting list for reservations and reviews that used words like exclusive and discerning clientele. Not the kind of place she'd ever been invited to before. She should cancel. Text him some polite excuse and pretend last night never happened. Go back to her life, figure out her marriage, stay in her lane. Elena looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror as she brushed her teeth. Same tired eyes, same face that had learned to smile pleasantly while feeling nothing. Same woman who'd spent 3 years shrinking. She was so sick of that woman. By 9:40, Elena was on the subway heading into Manhattan, wearing the only outfit she owned that felt even remotely appropriate. A navy dress she'd bought for her cousin's wedding 2 years ago, paired with a blazer that was slightly too warm for the weather. She'd actually put on makeup, tried to do something with her hair beyond the standard ponytail. The effort felt foreign, like she was preparing for a performance she didn't know the lines to. The cafe was nestled on a quiet street corner, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed an interior of weathered wood tables and trailing plants. Elegant without trying too hard. Expensive in a way that didn't announce itself. Elena hesitated outside, suddenly aware of how out of place she looked. This was a mistake. She didn't belong here, didn't belong in Luca Moretti's world, didn't... You came. She turned. Luca stood behind her, apparently materialized out of thin air, wearing charcoal slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. Somehow he looked both more casual and more devastating than he had in his suit last night. His dark eyes assessed her with that same unsettling intensity. "I wasn't sure you would," he continued. Elena found her voice. "I almost didn't. But you did." Luca gestured toward the cafe entrance. "Shall we?" Inside, the hostess greeted him by name. "Mr. Moretti, your usual table is ready," and led them to a corner booth that offered privacy without isolation. Luca waited until Elena was seated before taking his own chair, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that felt both natural and calculated. A server appeared instantly with coffee, water, menus. "The usual for you, Mr. Moretti?" "Please." Luca looked at Elena. "Have you eaten?" She hadn't. Her stomach had been tied in knots since waking up. "Just coffee is fine." "Bring the fruit and pastry selection," Luca told the server, who nodded and disappeared. "You should eat something." "I'm not hungry." "That wasn't a question about your hunger." He leaned back, studying her with unnerving directness. "You look like you haven't slept, haven't eaten properly in days, maybe weeks. When's the last time someone made sure you took care of yourself?" Elena bristled at the observation, accurate as it was. "I can take care of myself." "Can you?" Luca's tone wasn't mocking, just curious. "Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who spends all her energy taking care of everyone else." The server returned with a tiered stand laden with croissants, scones, fresh berries, and small containers of jam and cream. Elena's stomach betrayed her with an audible rumble. Luca smiled slightly. "Eat, Elena. We'll talk after." She wanted to refuse on principle, to prove she wasn't some fragile thing that needed managing, but the food smelled incredible, and she was hungry, and suddenly she was tired of denying herself small pleasures because of pride. Elena took a scone and spread it with jam, hyper-aware of Luca watching her. "Why did you ask me here?" she said between bites, needing to break the silence. "Because I wanted to see you again." The directness startled her. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're wasted in your current life." Luca's fingers traced the rim of his coffee cup. "I know you're brilliant at organizing chaos, terrible at advocating for yourself, and married to a man who doesn't deserve you." Elena set down the scone. "You have no right. I also know he's been cheating on you for 4 months with a woman named Jessica Chen who works at his company." Luca's voice remained calm, delivering the information like a weather report. "Product manager, 27. They meet Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at a hotel in Midtown." The blood drained from Elena's face. "How could you possibly know that?" "I make it my business to know things about people I'm interested in." He held up a hand before she could respond. "Before you ask, yes, I had you investigated. Background check, financial records, the basics." "No, I'm not sorry about invading your privacy. I don't invest in unknown quantities." Elena pushed back from the table, anger cutting through her shock. "Invest? I'm not a stock portfolio, Mr. Moretti." "Luca, and no, you're not." He didn't move, didn't try to stop her from leaving. "You're something far more valuable. Your potential being crushed under the weight of other people's mediocrity. I'm offering you a way out. By having me investigated? By stalking my husband? By giving you information you need to make informed decisions." Luca's eyes never left hers. "Your husband doesn't love you, Elena. Maybe he did once, I don't know. But right now you're a convenience to him, someone to split rent with, to handle the domestic things he doesn't want to think about. He's already moved on. The only question is whether you're brave enough to do the same." The words hit like physical blows, each one true and terrible. Elena sank back into her seat, hating how much she wanted to argue and couldn't. "What do you want from me?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Luca leaned forward, elbows on the table, giving her his complete attention. "I want to offer you a job." Of all the things she'd expected him to say, that wasn't one of them. "A job?" "I'm opening a new hotel in Manhattan. Boutique luxury, 60 rooms, scheduled to launch in 6 months. I need someone to design and coordinate the event spaces, ballrooms, private dining areas, rooftop venue. Someone with an eye for detail and the ability to execute complex logistics." He paused. "Someone like you." Elena stared at him. "I coordinate events. I don't design spaces. I haven't done actual design work since you graduated top of your class from design school with a portfolio that impressed every professor you worked with." Luca pulled out his phone, scrolled, then turned it to show her. Her own work. Conceptual drawings for a restaurant she'd designed in her final year, renderings she'd been proud of once upon a time. "You're talented, Elena. You put it away because someone made you believe stability was more important than ambition. I'm giving you a chance to pick it back up. How do you have my portfolio?" "Your old professor still has your files. He was very enthusiastic about your potential when I asked." Luca pocketed the phone. "The position pays $90,000 annually, plus performance bonuses. Health insurance, travel stipend, discretionary budget for project needs. I'm offering you complete creative control, with final approval rights staying with me." 90,000, nearly double what she made now. Enough to get her own apartment, her own life, her own... "Why?" Elena interrupted her own spiraling thoughts. "Why me? You could hire anyone. Established designers with portfolios full of completed projects. Why offer this to someone you met last night?" Luca was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute certainty. Because talent is common, vision is common. What's rare is someone who can see what needs to be done and then actually do it, no matter how many obstacles get in the way. I watched you manage that entire event last night while your supervisor abandoned you. You didn't complain, didn't make excuses. You just handled it. That's what I need. And if I say no, then you go back to Brooklyn and try to repair a marriage to a man who's already decided you're not enough." Luca's bluntness should have felt cruel. Instead, it felt like relief. Someone finally saying out loud what she'd been afraid to acknowledge. "No judgment, Elena. Some people prefer the devil they know, but I don't think you're one of them." Elena's hands shook as she reached for her coffee. Everything in her life had been carefully controlled, carefully planned, carefully small. This was reckless, dangerous, accepting a job from a man she'd just met, a man with a reputation for being ruthless, a man who looked at her like she mattered. "I need time to think about it," she said. "Of course. Take until Monday." Luca signaled for the check. "But Elena? Your husband is going to see Jessica again this afternoon. Thursday, remember? If you go home and pretend to believe his excuses, if you make yourself small enough to fit into the shape he wants, you'll never get this offer again. I don't invest in people who won't invest in themselves." The check arrived and disappeared, paid with a card Elena never saw. Luca stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. "I'll have a car take you home," he said. "Or anywhere else you'd rather go." Elena stood on shaky legs. "I can take the subway." "I know you can. I'm offering an alternative." He pulled out another business card, this one with a different number. "My direct line. When you've made your decision, call me, day or night." She took the card, their fingers brushing again. That same electric current, impossible to ignore. "Thank you for breakfast." "Thank you for coming." Luca's expression softened slightly, revealing something almost warm beneath the controlled exterior. "You deserve better than what you've accepted, Elena. I hope you realize that before it's too late." Then he was gone, moving through the cafe with that same commanding presence, leaving Elena standing alone with a job offer that felt like a lifeline and a threat all at once. Outside, a black car waited at the curb. The driver opened the door without being asked. Elena climbed in, gave her Brooklyn address, and spent the entire ride staring at the business card in her hands. By the time she reached the apartment, she'd made a decision. The space felt different in daylight, smaller somehow, more suffocating. Elena moved through the rooms like a stranger, cataloging someone else's life. Here was where she'd compromised on furniture because Adrian wanted modern minimalism. Here was where she'd abandoned her drafting table because there wasn't space for both their work. Here was where she'd slowly erased herself. Not anymore. Elena pulled out her phone and opened the tracking app she'd installed months ago, a petty piece of paranoia she'd felt guilty about at the time. Adrian's location showed him at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Midtown at 11:30 on a Thursday morning. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, Luca had said. Elena grabbed her keys and left. The hotel was a 40-minute subway ride that felt like descending into clarity. With each stop, Elena felt something hardening inside her. Not anger exactly, but determination. She'd spent 3 years making excuses, giving Adrian the benefit of the doubt, blaming herself for not being enough. No more. The Mandarin Oriental's lobby was all polished marble and hushed luxury. Elena walked to the elevator bank like she belonged there, like she'd done this 100 times. No one stopped her. Room 1647. She checked his credit card statement that morning, a charge from 2 weeks ago that Adrian had explained as a client lunch. The room number had been on the receipt she'd found crumpled in his jacket pocket. Elena knocked once, twice. On the third knock, the door opened. Jessica Chen was beautiful, petite, perfectly styled, wearing a hotel robe that had obviously been provided by the room. Her expression cycled from confusion to recognition to horror in about 3 seconds. "Oh my God," Jessica breathed. "Is Adrian here?" Elena's voice was remarkably steady. He's in the shower. Look, I don't want any trouble." "Neither do I." Elena pulled out her phone and took a photo of Jessica standing in the doorway, the room number visible behind her. "I just wanted to see for myself, to stop wondering if I was crazy for suspecting." "You're his wife." It wasn't a question. "For now." Elena lowered the phone. "Does he tell you he loves you?" Jessica wrapped the robe tighter, defensive. "That's none of your business." "He told me he loved me too, right up until he didn't." Elena felt strangely calm, like she was watching this conversation happen to someone else. "He'll do the same to you. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but eventually you'll wake up and realize you're just another person," he convinced, to make herself smaller for his convenience. "Elena?" Adrian's voice sharp with panic from inside the room. He appeared behind Jessica, wet hair dripping onto a hastily pulled-on t-shirt, face white with shock. "What the hell are you doing here?" Confirming what I already knew, Elena met his eyes without flinching. "I'll be moved out by Sunday. Don't contact me except through a lawyer." "Wait, you can't just— This is insane. You're overreacting." "I'm done reacting to you at all." Elena turned away. "Enjoy your afternoon." She walked to the elevator with her head high, ignoring Adrian's voice calling after her. It wasn't until the elevator doors closed that she allowed herself to shake, to breathe, to feel the full weight of what she'd just done. Her marriage was over. 3 years, gone. She should feel devastated. Instead, she felt free. Elena pulled out her phone and dialed the number on Luca's card. He answered on the second ring. "I accept," she said without preamble. "The job. I accept." There was a pause, then, "Where are you?" "Midtown. I just confronted my husband at the hotel where he's been cheating on me." Another pause. "Are you safe?" The question surprised her. "Yes. I'm fine. I needed you to know I'm serious about the job, about changing my life. I'm serious. I never doubted you were capable of it." Luca's voice carried something that might have been approval. "Send me your address. I'll have movers there tomorrow to pack your things." I can pack my own." "Elena." He cut her off gently. "Let me help. You've spent years doing everything alone. You don't have to anymore." Tears pricked her eyes. When was the last time someone had offered to help without expecting something in return? "Okay. Good. I'm sending a car to pick you up. It'll take you to your new apartment, corporate housing we keep for executives. 2 bedrooms in Chelsea, fully furnished. You can stay there until you find something permanent." "Luca, I can't accept—" "You can and you will. Consider it part of your signing package." His tone left no room for argument. "The car will be there in 10 minutes. Go outside and wait. Elena wiped her eyes, laughing slightly. You're very bossy. I prefer decisive. She could hear the smile in his voice. Welcome to Moretti Holdings, Elena. I think you're going to like it here. The line disconnected. Elena stood in the Mandarin Oriental lobby, her old life crumbling behind her and something new crystallizing ahead. Scary. Reckless. Exactly what she needed. The car arrived exactly 10 minutes later. Elena climbed in and gave herself permission to stop being invisible. The apartment in Chelsea was stunning. 10th floor corner unit with views of the Hudson River, hardwood floors. A kitchen with actual counter space. The furniture was tasteful without being impersonal. The kind of place that felt lived in despite being a corporate rental. Elena walked through the rooms in a daze, trying to reconcile this space with the cramped Brooklyn walk-up she'd left that morning. There's a contract on the counter, the driver said, lingering in the doorway. Mr. Moretti said to review it and call if you have questions. He'll send someone to pick it up tomorrow once you've signed. Elena found the envelope on the kitchen island. Heavy stock paper, Moretti Holdings letterhead. Inside was a formal employment contract that outlined everything Luca had promised and more. Design consultant, 6-month initial contract with option to extend, salary and benefits all clearly specified. At the bottom was a handwritten note in bold, angular script. You earned this. Don't doubt it. L. She signed without hesitation. That night, Elena slept in a bed that didn't carry Adrian's shape in the mattress, in an apartment that didn't smell like burnt coffee and resentment. She slept deeply for the first time in months, and when she woke Saturday morning, she felt like she'd been holding her breath for 3 years and finally remembered how to breathe. Her phone had 17 missed calls from Adrian. She blocked his number. The movers arrived at 9, efficient and professional, packing up her belongings from the Brooklyn apartment while Elena supervised. She took only what was hers: clothes, books, her abandoned portfolio from design school, the few possessions that had survived the marriage. Everything else could stay. Adrian showed up around noon, disheveled and angry. You can't do this, he said, blocking the door while movers carried boxes past him. Elena, be reasonable. We can work through this. Couples therapy, counseling, whatever you need. I need you to sign divorce papers. Elena handed him an envelope. I had a lawyer draw them up yesterday. No fault, clean split. I'm not asking for anything except out. Adrian's face cycled through emotions: shock, anger, desperation. You're really going to throw away 3 years over one mistake? 4 months isn't one mistake. It's a choice you made every single day. Elena kept her voice level. And honestly, I'm grateful. You showed me what I'd become, what I'd accepted. I don't accept it anymore. This is about that guy, isn't it? From the party. Adrian's eyes narrowed. I saw the way he looked at you. You're leaving me for him. I'm leaving you for me. Elena stepped past him into the hallway. But yes, he offered me a job. A real one, with real opportunities. The kind you said I should take seriously, remember? Working for him? Elena, do you have any idea what people say about Luca Moretti? He's dangerous. So am I, apparently. She smiled without humor. I'm the woman who's finally done making herself small. Sign the papers, Adrian. Make this easy on both of us. He signed. 3 years of marriage dissolved in 20 minutes of paperwork and bitter silence. By Saturday evening, Elena's things were installed in the Chelsea apartment, and her old life was officially over. She stood at the window watching the city lights come on, feeling untethered and terrified and alive. Her phone buzzed. A message from Luca. Dinner tomorrow night. I'll send details. We should discuss the project. Elena typed back. Is this a business dinner or a date? The response came quickly. Does it matter? She smiled, surprising herself. I suppose not. 8 p.m. Dress however you're comfortable. I don't need you to perform. That last line lodged somewhere near her heart. How long had it been since someone had told her not to perform? To just be herself? Elena spent Sunday shopping for clothes that actually fit the person she wanted to become. Not sensible black dresses for catering events, but things with color and structure and confidence. It felt indulgent and necessary all at once. By 8 o'clock, she was dressed in a deep emerald dress that hugged her curves without apologizing for them. Her hair loose around her shoulders, minimal jewelry. The woman in the mirror looked unfamiliar, powerful. The car arrived exactly on time. Elena climbed in, nerves and anticipation warring in her stomach. They drove to a restaurant in Soho. Intimate, exclusive, the kind of place that didn't advertise because everyone who mattered already knew about it. Luca was waiting at a private table in the back. He stood when she approached, his eyes traveling over her with unmistakable appreciation. Elena. He said her name like a discovery. You look different, she supplied. Like yourself. He held her chair. It suits you. They ordered wine and food that Elena barely tasted. Too aware of Luca's presence across the table, he asked about her weekend, about the apartment, about how she was handling the divorce. His questions were direct but not intrusive, and Elena found herself answering honestly, about the relief, the fear, the strange vertigo of having her life change completely in 72 hours. Do you regret it? Luca asked over dessert. No. Elena was surprised by how quickly the answer came. I should, probably, but I don't. Good. He leaned back, studying her. Tomorrow you start working. I'll have my architects send over the current plans for the hotel. Your job is to tell us everything that's wrong with them. Elena raised an eyebrow. That's quite an opening assignment. I hired you for your vision, not your compliance. Luca's smile was sharp. If I wanted someone to agree with everything I proposed, I'd talk to a mirror. I want someone who will make the project better, even if it means telling me I'm wrong. And if we disagree fundamentally, then we argue until we find something better than either of our original ideas. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. I don't break easily, Elena. Neither should you. The touch sent heat racing up her arm. Elena knew she should pull away, maintain professional boundaries, remember that this was her boss and she'd been divorced for exactly 1 day. She didn't pull away. This is complicated, she said quietly. It doesn't have to be. Luca's thumb traced circles on her wrist. I'm attracted to you. You're attracted to me. We also work well together. Why overcomplicate it? Because people will say I slept my way into this job, that I'm using you to get ahead. People will say that regardless. His eyes held hers. What matters is what you know to be true. Did you earn this position? Yes. Are you going to do exceptional work? Yes. Then let them talk. Luca released her hand but held her gaze. I learned a long time ago that you can't control what people think. You can only control what you do. So do the work. Prove them wrong. And if somewhere in that process we discover we want more than a professional relationship, he shrugged. We're both adults. We can handle complex situations. Elena laughed, some of the tension breaking. You make it sound simple. It is simple. People make it complicated. Luca signaled for the check. I'll have a car take you home. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock, my office. Bring questions. I always have questions. I know. His smile turned genuine, warming his features. It's one of my favorite things about you. The car dropped Elena at her building just before 11. She rode the elevator up, replaying the evening in her mind. The way Luca had looked at her, the heat of his hand on hers, the promise of something building between them. Inside the apartment, she kicked off her heels and poured herself wine, standing at the window to watch the city. A week ago, she'd been invisible, trapped in a marriage that was killing her slowly. Now she had a job she'd dreamed about, an apartment that felt like possibility, and the attention of a man who saw her completely. It was terrifying. It was perfect. Her phone buzzed one last time. Luca. Sleep well, Elena. Tomorrow we build something extraordinary. She smiled and typed back, I'm ready. And for the first time in 3 years, she meant it. Moretti Holdings occupied the top 15 floors of a glass tower in Midtown that reflected the sky like a mirror. Elena stood on the sidewalk at 8:45 Monday morning, staring up at the building and wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or finally doing something right. The lobby was all polished granite and soaring ceilings, the kind of corporate elegance that whispered money without shouting it. Elena gave her name to security and was handed a temporary badge along with directions to the executive floor. The elevator ride to the 40th floor took less than a minute but felt like crossing into another world. Luca's assistant met her the moment the doors opened. a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a sharper suit, who introduced herself as Victoria Chen and made it immediately clear she ran this floor with military precision. Mr. Moretti is finishing a call, Victoria said, leading Elena down a hallway lined with contemporary art that probably cost more than Elena's entire education. He's asked that you start reviewing the hotel plans in the main conference room. Coffee preferences? Black is fine, thank you. Victoria's expression softened slightly. You'll fit in well here. Everyone else orders complicated drinks that take 10 minutes to make. She opened a door to reveal a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Make yourself comfortable. Mr. Moretti will join you shortly. The plans were already spread across the massive table. Architectural drawings, renderings, material samples, all organized with meticulous care. Elena set down her bag and dove in, her designer's eye immediately cataloging what worked and what didn't. Within 15 minutes, she had a legal pad covered in notes and questions, so absorbed she didn't hear the door open behind her. You found the problems. Elena spun. Luca stood in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking unfairly attractive for 9 in the morning. He moved into the room with that same commanding presence, glancing at her notes. The ballroom's proportions are off, Elena said, falling back on professional footing to steady herself. You're trying to fit too much square footage into a space that needs to breathe. And these columns, they'll create sightline issues for any event larger than 50 people. Luca picked up her legal pad, scanning her observations. The architect assured me this was the optimal configuration. The architect was wrong. Elena pulled out one of the renderings, pointing to the structural elements. Look at the flow. Guests would have to navigate around these supports constantly. It kills the whole purpose of a luxury ballroom, which is making people feel like they have space to move, to be seen. This feels cramped. Even though it's 3,000 square feet? Space isn't just about measurements. It's about perception, movement, energy. Elena was warming to her subject now, the nervousness falling away as design took over. You could cut this down to 2,500 square feet, eliminate 2 of these columns, and it would feel twice as large. Luca set down the pad, a slow smile spreading across his face. You've been here 20 minutes, and you've already identified the exact problem my architect and I have been arguing about for 3 weeks. Oh. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize for being right. He moved closer, examining the rendering over her shoulder. Elena was acutely aware of his proximity, the scent of his cologne, the warmth radiating from his body. Show me your solution. They spent the next 2 hours bent over the plans, Elena sketching modifications while Luca asked pointed questions that pushed her thinking. He was brilliant. She'd known that intellectually, but experiencing it was different. He saw 3 steps ahead, understood the business implications of every design choice, challenged her when her ideas were too conservative and reined her in when they got too ambitious. It was intoxicating. We should redesign the rooftop completely, Elena said around 11, energized despite having barely touched her coffee. Right now it's trying to be a garden and an event space, and succeeding at neither. Pick one. Make it spectacular. Which would you choose? Elena studied the plans, thinking. Event space. Manhattan has gardens. What it doesn't have is enough sophisticated venues with this kind of view. Make it dramatic, all glass and steel and city lights. Let the skyline be the decoration. Luca's eyes gleamed. I like the way you think. Even though it means scrapping months of your architect's work? Especially because of that. He straightened, rolling his shoulders. We've been too conservative, too worried about offending existing sensibilities. You're right. We should be bold. Victoria appeared in the doorway. Your 11:30 is here. Cancel it. Luca didn't look away from Elena. Clear my afternoon, Ms. Voss and I need time to rebuild this entire project. Luca, I can't monopolize your whole day, Elena started. You're not monopolizing anything. This is your job. He gathered the plans. Let's move to my office. More space to spread out. Luca's office was enormous, a corner suite with 3 walls of windows and furniture that managed to look both expensive and lived in. Elena tried not to gawk as she sat up at his conference table, but it was impossible not to be impressed by the casual display of power the space represented. They worked through lunch, which Victoria ordered in without being asked. Salads and sandwiches from somewhere that definitely didn't deliver to normal people. Elena barely noticed what she was eating, too focused on the creative flow happening across the table. This was what she'd missed: the collaboration, the problem solving, the pure joy of designing something beautiful and functional. "Tell me about your design philosophy," Luca said during a rare break in the work. Elena looked up from the rendering she'd been sketching. "My philosophy? What drives your choices? What do you want people to feel when they enter a space you've designed?" No one had asked her that in years. Elena set down her pencil, considering. "I want them to feel seen, anticipated, like the space was designed specifically for them, even though it's meant for hundreds of people. Good design is invisible. It works so well that people don't notice it. They just feel comfortable, welcomed, like they belong." Luca was very still, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "That's what you do, isn't it? Make people feel like they belong." "I try." "You succeed." He stood, moving to the windows. "I've been to 1,000 events in spaces designed by the best firms in the world. Most of them feel like beautiful museums. Impressive, but cold. The Castellano party was different. Every detail felt intentional, but not fussy. Elegant, but warm. That was you." Elena joined him at the window, looking out over Manhattan. From this height, the city looked like a circuit board, all patterns and connections, chaotic and ordered at the same time. "I had good vendors, a solid budget, clients who trusted Elena." Luca turned to face her. "Learn to take credit for your work. You're exceptional at what you do. Own it." She met his eyes, seeing nothing but absolute certainty there. When was the last time someone had looked at her like this? Like she was capable of anything, like her talent was undeniable. Adrian had always been quick with criticism, slow with praise. Her previous supervisors had appreciated her work but never celebrated it. Luca saw her, really saw her, and he wasn't afraid to say it out loud. "Thank you," Elena said quietly. "Don't thank me. Just believe it yourself." He checked his watch. "It's almost 5. We should stop before I work you to death on your first day." "I don't mind. This has been..." Elena searched for the right word. "This has been the best day I've had in years." Something shifted in Luca's expression. Satisfaction, possession, heat. "Come to dinner with me." It wasn't quite a question. Elena should probably maintain boundaries, keep things professional, remember that she'd been divorced for exactly 4 days, and jumping into something with her boss was objectively insane. "Yes," she said anyway. Luca smiled. "Good. I know a place." The place turned out to be a private dining room at an Italian restaurant in the West Village, where the owner greeted Luca like family and seated them at a table set for 2 with fresh flowers and candlelight that felt intimate without being ostentatious. Wine appeared, followed by courses of food that tasted like someone's grandmother had been cooking all day specifically for them. "Did you grow up in Italy?" Elena asked over perfectly prepared ossobuco. "Milano, until I was 12. My father moved us to New York when he expanded the business." Luca's expression clouded slightly. "He died when I was 18. Heart attack. I inherited everything: the company, the debts, the rivals who thought a teenager would be easy to destroy. But you weren't." "No." His smile was sharp. "I learned quickly that in business, you're either the predator or the prey. I chose predator." Elena could see it. The ruthlessness that lurked beneath his sophisticated exterior, the willingness to do whatever necessary to win. It should have frightened her. Instead, she found it strangely compelling. "Do you have family?" she asked. "A younger sister, Sophia. She's a doctor in Boston, cardiology. Very smart, very stubborn, thinks I'm too controlling." Luca's expression softened when he spoke about her. "She's probably right. What about you?" "Parents in Oregon. We're not close. They didn't approve of Adrian, thought I was getting married too young. Turns out they were right." Elena sipped her wine. "I haven't told them about the divorce yet. I'm not ready for the 'I told you so' conversation." "They said that to you?" Luca's voice cooled dangerously. "Not in those words, but the subtext was clear." Elena shrugged, trying to make it casual even though it still stung. "They wanted me to be practical, stable. I think they were disappointed when I chose design school over something more sensible." "There's nothing sensible about crushing someone's passion." Luca reached across the table, his fingers finding hers. Your parents were wrong. Adrian was wrong. Anyone who tried to make you smaller was wrong. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back, overwhelmed by the casualness with which Luca dismantled every criticism she'd internalized over the years. You barely know me. I know enough. His thumb traced patterns on her hand. I know you're brilliant. I know you've been undervalued for years. I know that when you talk about design, your whole face lights up like you finally found oxygen after drowning. That's enough. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Elena knew they were crossing lines, blurring boundaries that should probably stay clear. She didn't care. Luca, she started, not even sure what she wanted to say. He shook his head. You don't have to decide anything tonight. We can take this as slow as you need. What if I don't want slow? His eyes darkened. Then we won't be slow. But Elena, I need you to understand what you're getting into. I'm not an easy man. I'm possessive, demanding, used to getting what I want. If we do this, if we cross this line, I won't share you. I won't be casual about you. This becomes real, or it doesn't happen at all. Elena's heart hammered. Every rational part of her brain screamed warnings. Too fast, too intense, too dangerous. But she'd spent 3 years being rational, being careful, being small. I understand, she said. Luca stood, still holding her hand, and pulled her up with him. For a moment they just stood there, close enough that Elena could feel the heat of his body, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Then he lowered his head and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was claiming, possessive, absolute, everything Luca had warned her he would be. Elena melted into it, her hands fisting in his shirt, 3 years of feeling nothing suddenly exploding into feeling everything. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca's control was visibly frayed. We should leave, he said roughly, before I forget we're in public. The car ride back to Elena's apartment was silent but electric. Luca's hand wrapped around hers, his thumb making small circles on her wrist that sent heat racing through her body. When they pulled up to her building, he walked her to the door. I'm not coming up, he said, though his eyes said he wanted to. Not tonight. You've had enough changes this week. You need time to be sure. I'm sure. Ask me again tomorrow. Luca kissed her forehead, tender in a way that made her chest ache. Sleep well, Elena. He was gone before she could argue, leaving her standing in the lobby trying to remember how to breathe normally. Upstairs, Elena paced her apartment, too wired to sleep. She felt alive in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Every nerve ending sparking, every sense heightened. This was reckless, dangerous, exactly what she needed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Luca. I should have mentioned we're having a project meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. with the architect and construction team. Prepare to defend your ideas. They won't make it easy. Elena smiled and typed back. Good. I'm done with easy. That's my girl. She fell asleep with her phone still in her hand, dreams full of glass towers and dark eyes and the feeling of finally being seen. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of work and stolen moments that blurred the line between professional and personal until Elena couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. She threw herself into redesigning the hotel, spending 12-hour days at Moretti Holdings sketching concepts and arguing with contractors. The architect had been skeptical at first, dismissive even, until Luca made it clear that Elena's vision was now the official direction. After that, resistance crumbled. Elena discovered she was good at this, not just the design work, but the politics of it, knowing when to compromise and when to hold firm. Building alliances with the construction team, presenting ideas in ways that made other people think they'd contributed to them. She'd learned these skills serving invisible at events. Now she weaponized them in boardrooms. And through it all, Luca was there, watching, supporting, pushing her to be bolder. Their relationship existed in a strange space, not quite defined, but undeniably real. He took her to dinners that felt like dates. She stayed late in his office working while he handled calls, and they'd end the night with wine and conversation that ranged from business strategy to childhood memories. He kissed her goodnight, but never pushed for more, giving her space to adjust, even though the tension between them built like a physical presence. Victoria noticed, of course. Everyone in the office noticed, but no one said anything directly, perhaps because Elena's work spoke for itself. The hotel redesign was brilliant. Even the skeptics admitted it. She was earning her position in real time. 3 weeks in, Elena was reviewing fabric samples in the conference room when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Elena Voss? Yes? This is Rebecca Morrison from Harrison West and Associates. We represent Adrian Voss in the matter of your divorce proceedings. The woman's voice was crisp, professional, cold. Mr. Voss would like to discuss the settlement terms. He feels the current proposal is inequitable. Elena's stomach dropped. I'm not asking for anything except out. How is that inequitable? Mr. Voss believes he's entitled to half the signing bonus you received from your new employer as it was earned during your marriage. We're also requesting spousal support for a period of... No. Elena cut her off. Absolutely not. The marriage is over. He doesn't get to profit from my new job. Mrs. Voss, I'd strongly suggest you retain legal counsel before making any... Elena hung up. Her hands were shaking. Of course Adrian wasn't going to make this easy. Of course he'd found out about her job at Moretti Holdings and decided he deserved a piece of it. That was exactly his pattern. Take credit for other people's work. Claim he'd supported her even while tearing her down. Elena? She looked up. Luca stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from professional to concerned the moment he saw her face. What happened? My husband, ex-husband, he's contesting the divorce, wants half my signing bonus plus spousal support. The words tumbled out bitter and angry. 3 years I supported his career while mine went nowhere, and now he wants to take from me. Luca's expression went very still, very cold. Give me your lawyer's information. What? No, I can handle... Elena. He moved into the room, taking her shaking hands in his. Let me help. I have an entire legal team on retainer. They'll bury Adrian's lawyer in paperwork until he begs to accept your original terms. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering. Luca's eyes were hard as diamonds. No one takes from you, not anymore. Not while I'm here. Elena wanted to argue, to maintain her independence, to handle this herself. But she was so tired of handling everything alone. Okay. Good. Luca pulled out his phone, already dialing. Marcus, I need you to connect me with Jennifer Reeves at our legal department. Yes, now. It's urgent. 45 minutes later, Elena had been transferred to a shark of a divorce attorney who made Rebecca Morrison sound like a kitten, and the entire weight of Moretti Holdings' legal resources had been aimed at making Adrian's life difficult. It should have felt like overkill. It felt like justice. Thank you, Elena said when Luca finally hung up his last call. Don't thank me. This is what partners do. He pulled her close, and Elena let herself lean against him, breathing in his scent. You're not alone anymore, Elena. The sooner you accept that, the easier this gets. I'm not used to accepting help. I know, it's adorable and frustrating in equal measure. Luca tilted her chin up. But you're going to learn, starting now. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. This was real. Whatever she and Luca were building, professionally, personally, all of it, was real. That night they had dinner at his penthouse. Elena had been there once before for a project meeting, but experiencing it alone with Luca was different. The space was massive, but somehow intimate, decorated with art that suggested actual taste rather than an interior designer's best guess. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a living painting. You cook? Elena watched Luca move around the kitchen with surprising competence, preparing pasta from scratch. My grandmother insisted. She said any Moretti who couldn't feed himself wasn't worth the name. He smiled at the memory. I spent every summer until I was 12 in her kitchen in Milano, learning recipes she'd learned from her mother. That's beautiful. It was loud, chaotic, perfect. Luca's hands worked the dough with practiced ease. She died the year before we moved to New York. I think my father couldn't bear to stay after that. The city had too many memories. Elena heard the grief beneath his casual tone. You miss her. Every day. He looked up, meeting her eyes. She would have liked you. She had no patience for people who pretended to be less than they were. Said it was insulting to the people who'd worked hard to become something. I wish I could have met her. So do I. Luca returned his attention to the pasta. She would have taken one look at Adrian and told me to hide you until you came to your senses. Elena laughed. That fast? Nonna had instincts about people. She was never wrong. He slid the pasta into boiling water. Wine? They ate on the terrace, 30 floors above the city, with Manhattan glittering below them like scattered diamonds. The pasta was perfect, simple, elegant, exactly right. Elena felt something unwinding in her chest, some knot of tension she'd carried for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Can I ask you something? She said as they finished eating. Anything. Why me? Elena set down her wine glass. I know you said you saw potential, but you could have offered me a job without this, without the personal involvement. Why risk it? Luca was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because the moment I saw you in that ballroom, moving through chaos like you were conducting an orchestra, I knew you were different. And when I looked in your eyes and saw how much you were hiding, how much you'd learned to compress yourself into acceptable shapes, he shook his head. I wanted to see what would happen if you stopped hiding, if someone gave you permission to be as big as you actually are. That's not an answer, isn't it? Luca's smile was slight. I collect rare things, Elena. Art, real estate, people with exceptional abilities. You're rare. The question isn't why I pursued you. The question is, why wouldn't I? It should have bothered her, being described as collectible. Instead, Elena found it oddly honest. Luca didn't pretend to be anything other than what he was, a man who saw value and claimed it, who built empires from recognition of potential others missed. And what happens when you get bored of your collections? She asked. I don't. Luca stood, offering his hand. I'm very good at identifying what has lasting value. Elena took his hand and let him pull her up. They stood close on the terrace, the city humming below them, the night air warm against her skin. Luca's hand settled on her waist, and Elena's found his shoulders, and the question hovering between them was so obvious it didn't need to be spoken. Stay, Luca said quietly. Elena's breath caught. Luca? No expectations. You can take the guest room if you want. But stay. Let me wake up knowing you're here. It was the vulnerability in his voice that decided her. This man who commanded boardrooms and built empires, asking her to stay like he wasn't sure she would, like he needed her to. Okay, Elena whispered. She didn't take the guest room. Later, wrapped in Luca's sheets with his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Elena felt something fundamental shift. This was no longer about escape or revenge or proving something to Adrian. This was about her and Luca building something real, something powerful, something that terrified her with its intensity. What are you thinking? Luca's voice rumbled in his chest. That I should probably be more scared than I am. Are you scared? Elena considered. No, I should be, but I'm not. Good. His arms tightened around her. Because I meant what I said, Elena. I don't share. I don't do casual. If you're here, you're mine. Possessive, she murmured. Absolutely. No apology in his tone. Can you handle that? Elena smiled against his skin. I think I can handle you just fine. His laugh was low and pleased. We'll see. She fell asleep feeling safer than she had in years, wrapped in the arms of a dangerous man who saw her completely and wanted her anyway. The divorce papers came through 2 weeks later. Adrian had folded completely, accepting Elena's original terms without contest. Luca's lawyers had been thorough, Elena's new attorney informed her. They'd found some financial irregularities in Adrian's company that would have been problematic if examined too closely. Nothing illegal, but enough to make fighting the divorce very expensive and very public. I didn't ask them to threaten him, Luca said when Elena confronted him about it. But you knew they would. I knew they'd find leverage. That's what I pay them for. He didn't look remotely apologetic. Are you angry? Elena thought about it. A month ago, she would have been. Now? No, I'm relieved it's over. Then the method doesn't matter. She supposed it didn't. The hotel project consumed the next month. Elena worked harder than she'd ever worked, driven by the need to prove, to Luca, to herself, to everyone who'd ever doubted her, that she belonged in this world. The designs came together beautifully, each space flowing into the next with the kind of cohesive vision that only happened when someone cared deeply about every detail. It's perfect, Luca said the day they finalized the main ballroom plans. He stood in the empty space. Still just concrete and steel, but Elena could see the finished room overlaid on the reality. This is exactly what I wanted. It's better than what you wanted, Elena corrected with a smile. What you wanted was safe. This is spectacular. Arrogant, but his eyes gleamed with approval. I learned from the best. They were standing close in the empty ballroom, and Elena was hyper-aware that they were alone, that construction had ended for the day, that the security cameras in this section weren't installed yet. Luca's hand found her waist, pulling her against him. We should celebrate, he said. Should we? Definitely. His mouth found her neck. I'm thinking champagne, and you, and very little else. Elena laughed, tilting her head to give him better access. That sounds perfect. They never made it to the champagne. 2 months after Elena had walked into Moretti Holdings for the first time, the hotel project was ahead of schedule and under budget. Her divorce was finalized, and she'd moved from the corporate apartment into a place of her own, a beautiful one-bedroom in the West Village with exposed brick and actual character. She was building a life that felt real, felt hers, felt like everything she'd been too afraid to reach for before, and Luca was there for all of it, steady and demanding and absolutely certain she could handle anything. He pushed her professionally, refused to let her doubt herself, and demanded excellence because he knew she was capable of it. Personally, he was everything Adrian hadn't been, present, attentive, genuinely interested in her thoughts and dreams and daily frustrations. It should have felt too perfect. Instead, it felt earned. I have something for you, Luca said one evening over dinner at his penthouse. Elena looked up from her pasta. What? He slid an envelope across the table. Inside were tickets to Milan, first class, open return for both of them. The hotel project wraps in a month, Luca said. When it does, we're taking a week. I want to show you where I grew up, where my grandmother taught me to cook, where the Moretti family started. Elena's throat tightened. Luca? Say yes, Elena. His eyes held hers. Say you'll come with me. It was more than a vacation. It was him bringing her into his history, his family, the parts of himself he kept private. It was a statement about what they were building together. Yes, Elena said. I'll come with you. Luca's smile was everything. Neither of them knew that in 3 days everything would change. That the past Luca had carefully managed would come roaring back with violence and blood. That Elena would have to choose between safety and standing beside him in the darkness. But tonight, in the glow of candlelight and promises, they were simply two people who'd found each other against all odds, building something extraordinary from the wreckage of Elena's old life and the careful control of Luca's empire. Tonight, that was enough. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning, 3 days after Luca had given Elena the Milan tickets. She was alone in the hotel's main ballroom, supervising the installation of the custom light fixtures she'd designed, when Marcus Rinaldi appeared in the doorway. Luca's head of security was a man who radiated controlled danger. Former military, Elena had learned, with the kind of watchful stillness that suggested he catalogued every exit and potential threat without thinking about it. Ms. Voss? His tone was professionally neutral, but Elena caught the tension beneath it. Mr. Moretti needs you to return to the office immediately. Elena's stomach tightened. Is he all right? He's fine, but there's a situation that requires your presence. Marcus gestured toward the door. The car is waiting. The ride to Moretti Holdings took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Marcus offered no additional information despite Elena's questions. His jaw set in a way that suggested he'd been given specific instructions not to elaborate. By the time they pulled up to the building, Elena's imagination had conjured a dozen catastrophes. Victoria met her at the elevator, her normally composed face drawn with worry. He's in his office. Go straight in. Elena half ran down the hallway, heart hammering. She pushed through Luca's door without knocking and found him standing at the windows, phone pressed to his ear, his entire body radiating fury barely held in check. I don't care what it takes, he said into the phone, his voice lethal. Find him. Now. He ended the call and turned. The moment he saw Elena, some of the fury softened. You're here. Good. What's happening? Elena moved toward him. Marcus wouldn't tell me anything, and you're scaring me. Luca pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with almost desperate intensity. For a moment he just held her, and Elena felt the tension vibrating through his body. Someone leaked photos to the press, he said finally. Of us. At dinner last week, leaving my penthouse, kissing outside your apartment. Elena pulled back to look at him. Okay, that's not ideal, but we weren't exactly hiding. The headline identifies you as my mistress, claims I destroyed your marriage, that you're using your relationship with me to advance your career. Luca's expression was carved from ice. They're calling you opportunistic, a gold digger, saying everything you've accomplished is because you're sleeping with me. The words hit like physical blows. Elena had known this might happen eventually. People always assumed the worst about women who succeeded near powerful men. But knowing it intellectually was different from experiencing it. Who leaked them? She asked, proud of how steady her voice sounded. That's what I'm trying to find out. Luca released her, pacing to his desk. The photos were taken by a professional. Long lens, high quality, strategic angles designed to look incriminating. Someone hired them specifically to damage you. Not you. Me too, but primarily you. He pulled up something on his computer, turned the screen. Read the article. It barely mentions our business relationship. It's all focused on how you went from serving champagne at the Castellano party to working for me within a week. How you moved out of your husband's apartment into corporate housing I provided. How quickly your divorce was finalized after my lawyers got involved. Elena read the article, bile rising in her throat. Everything in it was technically true. Dates, facts, timeline, all accurate. But the presentation twisted it into something ugly, made her look calculating and cold. They make it sound like I planned this, she said quietly, like I targeted you from the start. I know. Luca's hands fisted at his sides. And people will believe it because it fits the narrative they want. Woman uses powerful man to escape her circumstances. It's easier than believing you're legitimately talented. Adrian, the name fell from Elena's lips with absolute certainty. He did this. He's the only one angry enough, petty enough. We're already investigating that angle. Luca moved back to her. But Elena, even if it was him, the damage is done. This is going to get worse before it gets better. The press will dig into everything, your marriage, your background, every decision you've made. They'll talk to your former coworkers, your design school professors, anyone who might have something interesting to say. Elena felt the walls closing in. She'd been invisible for so long, and now she was about to be examined under the harshest possible light. Every choice picked apart, every accomplishment questioned. What do we do? She asked. We? Luca's expression shifted, something fierce and possessive flooding his features. We weather it, together. You don't face this alone. Luca, maybe we should... Elena hated the words even as she said them. Maybe we should put some distance between us, publicly, just until this dies down. If we're not seen together, the story loses momentum. No. The word cracked like a whip. Absolutely not. I told you from the beginning, Elena. I don't share and I don't hide. We're not giving them that satisfaction. But your career is brilliant because you're brilliant. Anyone who says otherwise is lying or threatened by you. Luca cupped her face in his hands. I will burn down everyone who tries to diminish what you've built. But I won't pretend you don't matter to me. I won't let you become invisible again just because some people can't handle seeing you shine. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. Part of her wanted exactly what he was offering. To fight, to refuse to shrink, to stand beside him and dare anyone to question her worth. But another part, the part that had learned survival meant compromise, whispered that backing down might be safer. I'm scared, she admitted. I know, but you're also strong enough to handle this. Luca kissed her forehead. Trust me, trust us. We'll get through this. The next 48 hours were brutal. The story spread from gossip blogs to mainstream business press, each outlet adding their own speculation and judgment. Elena's phone exploded with messages, some supportive, many vicious. Her email filled with interview requests and hate mail in equal measure. Photographers camped outside her apartment building and Moretti Holdings, snapping pictures every time she entered or left. Elena kept working. What else could she do? The hotel project needed her, and sitting at home would only feed the narrative that she was hiding in shame. So she showed up at the site every morning, head high, ignoring the cameras and shouted questions. She reviewed contractor bids, approved material selections, and made 100 small decisions that would determine whether the space she'd designed became reality. The construction crew, to their credit, rallied around her. These were men and women who'd worked with her daily for 2 months, who'd seen her talent firsthand. They knew the difference between someone who'd earned their position and someone who'd slept their way into it. "Anyone gives you trouble, you tell me," said Danny, the site foreman, a gruff man in his 50s who'd initially been skeptical of her designs. "We got your back, Ms. Voss." "Thank you, Danny." "Don't thank me. Just keep making us look good," he grinned. "My wife saw those renderings in the Times article. Said she's never been more proud of me for working on a project. Didn't even care about the gossip part." Small mercies. Elena held on to them. Luca was a constant presence, calling every few hours to check on her, sending Marcus to shadow her whenever she left the office, making it clear through his actions that she wasn't alone. But he also gave her space to prove herself, understanding that she needed to show everyone, including herself, that she could handle the pressure. On Thursday evening, Elena was reviewing final electrical plans when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Elena Voss?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "Yes?" "My name is Catherine Hartwell. I'm a reporter for New York Business Journal. I'm doing a feature on women in design and development, and I'd like to interview you about your work on the Moretti Hotel project." Elena's defenses went up immediately. "I'm not interested in doing interviews right now." "I understand, but this isn't about your personal life. It's about your professional achievements, your design philosophy, your career trajectory, what it's like being one of the few women leading a major luxury hotel renovation in Manhattan." "The timing seems convenient." "It is convenient," Catherine admitted. "You're in the news, which means more people will read the piece. But I've been following your work since the Castellano event. I was there, actually, covering the charity gala. Your work impressed me then. I'd like to give you a platform to talk about it on your own terms." Elena hesitated. Every instinct said to refuse, to keep her head down until the storm passed. But wasn't that exactly what the gossip articles wanted? For her to disappear, to validate their claims that she had nothing substantive to offer? "I need to think about it." "Of course. I'll email you some of my previous work so you can see I'm legitimate. If you decide to participate, we'll do it on your terms, your choice of location, final approval on quotes, everything." After they hung up, Elena sat in the empty ballroom and thought about what Luca had said, about not becoming invisible again, about standing beside him instead of behind him. She called him. "I got a call from a business reporter," Elena said when he answered. "Wants to interview me about the hotel design. Says it's not about the gossip, just the work." "Catherine Hartwell," Luca said immediately. "NYB Journal. She's legitimate, tough, but fair. She did a profile on me 2 years ago that was actually balanced." "You know her?" "I know everyone who might write about me or my businesses. It's survival." A pause. "What do you want to do?" Elena appreciated that he asked instead of telling her. "I think I should do it. Tell my own story instead of letting other people tell it for me." "I agree. But Elena, be prepared. She'll ask about us. About your divorce, about the timeline. You'll need to decide in advance how much you're willing to share." "I'll share the truth." "The whole truth? Including how we met, how quickly things developed?" Luca's tone was careful. "Some truths feed the narrative you're trying to counter." Elena thought about that. "Then I'll share my truth. That I was drowning in a marriage that had already ended. That you offered me a professional opportunity I'd earned through my work. That what happened personally was separate from what happened professionally, even if the timeline overlapped. And us? What we are now? I'll tell her you're mine, and I'm yours. And anyone who has a problem with that can choke on it." Luca's laugh was surprised and delighted. "That's my girl. Do the interview, Elena. Show them who you really are." The interview was scheduled for the following Tuesday at a cafe in Soho, neutral territory. Elena spent the weekend preparing, reviewing her work, getting her thoughts organized about design philosophy and career goals. She asked Luca not to coach her, wanting whatever came out to be genuinely hers. Monday night, Luca took her to dinner at a restaurant where everyone could see them. No hiding, no shame. They ate and talked and laughed. And when photographers caught them leaving hand in hand, Elena smiled directly at the cameras instead of ducking her head. Let them see. Let them know she wasn't apologizing for anything. The interview itself was both easier and harder than Elena expected. Catherine Hartwell was sharp, professional, and disarmingly direct. She asked detailed questions about the hotel design, about Elena's creative process, about the challenges of coordinating a project this size. For the first hour, they didn't discuss personal matters at all. Then Catherine set down her pen and looked Elena directly in the eye. I have to ask about the timeline, she said. The gossip press has made a lot of hay about how quickly you went from server to designer, from married to divorced, from unknown to Luca Moretti's partner in both business and life. What's your response to people who say it seems orchestrated? Elena had prepared for this. She took a breath and chose her words carefully. The timeline is compressed, yes, but compression doesn't equal conspiracy. She met Catherine's gaze steadily. I was serving at the Castellano event because that was my job at the time. I'd put my design career on hold to support my then-husband's ambitions, which is a choice many women make and then regret. Luca saw my work coordinating that event and recognized abilities I'd stopped showcasing. He offered me an opportunity to return to design work at a level I'd only dreamed about. And your marriage? It was already over. I just hadn't admitted it yet. Elena's voice remained steady. My ex-husband had been having an affair for 4 months before I found out. The marriage ended because of his choices, not because of Luca. But you accepted a job from Luca within days of that discovery. Some might say that's suspiciously convenient timing. Some might say a lot of things. Elena felt her spine straighten. Here's what I know. I'm good at what I do. Really good. I graduated top of my class from design school with a portfolio that impressed everyone who saw it. I spent 3 years managing complex events flawlessly while being paid a fraction of what I was worth. I earned the position at Moretti Holdings through demonstrated competence, not through who I'm sleeping with. Catherine's eyebrow raised slightly. So you're confirming the relationship with Luca Moretti is romantic? I'm confirming that Luca and I are together, yes. We started as professional colleagues and became something more. That's not unusual or scandalous. It's human. Elena leaned forward. But let me be very clear about something. My relationship with Luca doesn't define my professional value. I would be excellent at this job whether I was dating him or not. The only difference is that he was willing to look past the invisible uniform I was wearing and see what I was actually capable of. Invisible uniform? That's what service jobs do to women like me. We learn to be pleasant, accommodating, forgettable. We serve people who don't see us as individuals, just functions. I was very good at being invisible. Elena's voice gained strength. Luca saw me anyway. He recognized talent being wasted and offered me a chance to stop hiding it. I'll never apologize for taking that chance. Catherine was scribbling notes rapidly. What do you say to women who look at your story and see it as confirmation that you need a powerful man to succeed? I'd say they're wrong, but I'd also say I understand why they might think that. Elena chose her words carefully. We live in a world where women's professional achievements are constantly attributed to the men around them, where we're either not ambitious enough or too ambitious, where we can't win no matter what choices we make. My success isn't about Luca giving me opportunities I didn't earn. It's about me finally having the courage to reach for what I deserved all along. And if Luca hadn't offered you the job, Elena smiled slightly, I would have found another way. Maybe it would have taken longer. Maybe the path would have been harder, but I was done being invisible the moment I walked out of my marriage. Luca accelerated the timeline, but he didn't create the trajectory. That was always mine. The interview continued for another hour, delving into specific design choices. Elena's vision for the hotel, her thoughts on the luxury hospitality industry. By the time they finished, Elena felt wrung out but also strangely empowered. She told her truth. What people did with it was beyond her control. Off the record, Catherine said as they were wrapping up, I think you're either very brave or very foolish to be this honest. Probably both. Good. Those are the only 2 types of women who ever change anything. Catherine smiled. The piece will run next week. I'll send you a draft for quote approval. Elena walked back to her apartment, Marcus following at a discreet distance, and felt something settle in her chest. She'd faced the judgment, the questions, the doubt. She'd answered honestly. And she was still standing. Her phone rang as she unlocked her door. Luca. "How did it go?" he asked. "I think I either helped or destroyed my career. We'll find out next week." "You were honest?" "Brutally." "Then you helped." Absolute certainty in his voice. "Come to my place. I'll cook, you can decompress, and we cannot talk about any of this for a few hours." "That sounds perfect." Elena grabbed an overnight bag and headed back out, where Marcus was waiting with the car. 40 minutes later, she was curled up on Luca's couch with wine, while he moved around the kitchen preparing dinner, and the weight of the past week finally lifted enough that she could breathe. "Thank you," she said. Luca looked up from chopping vegetables. "For what?" "For not trying to control how I handled this. For letting me fight my own battles while still being there if I needed backup." "You don't need saving, Elena. You just needed someone to stop standing in your way." He set down the knife and came to sit beside her. "I'm proud of you. The way you've handled this pressure, the grace you've shown even when people were vicious. It's impressive. I learned from you." "No, you already had it in you. I just gave you permission to show it." Luca pulled her close. "The article is going to be good. Catherine respects competence and you radiate it. The narrative is shifting. People are starting to see what I saw from the beginning." "What's that?" "That you're extraordinary." Elena kissed him, pouring 3 months of gratitude and affection and growing love into it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca's eyes had darkened with heat. "Dinner can wait," he said roughly. "Good, because I can't." Later, wrapped in his sheets with the city glittering beyond the windows, Elena felt more herself than she'd ever been. The gossip would continue. The judgment wouldn't disappear overnight, but she'd stood up for herself, claimed her worth, and refused to shrink. It was enough. The next morning, Elena woke to find Luca already up, standing at the windows with his phone pressed to his ear and tension radiating from every line of his body. She sat up, immediately alert. "I don't care what you have to do," Luca said into the phone, his voice cold as winter. "Find out who's behind this and shut it down. Today." He ended the call and turned. The moment he saw Elena was awake, he crossed to the bed, sitting beside her. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Someone vandalized the hotel site last night, spray-painted across the main ballroom walls." His jaw was tight. The message said, "Built on a whore's back." Elena felt the air leave her lungs. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was someone threatening her, trying to destroy the work she'd poured her heart into. Who would? "I'm finding out." Luca's hands clenched into fists. "Marcus is reviewing security footage now. Whoever did this, Elena, they made a mistake. Because now they're not just attacking you, they're attacking my property, my business. And I don't forgive that." "Luca, get dressed. We're going to the site." His eyes were hard as diamonds. "I want you to see it, to know exactly what we're dealing with. And then I want you to watch while I tear apart everyone who thought they could hurt you and get away with it." Elena should probably be frightened by the cold fury in his voice. Instead, she felt something fierce and dark unfurl in her chest. Someone had tried to break her. They were about to learn that she didn't break anymore. "Let's go," she said. The hotel site was crawling with police and private security when they arrived. Marcus met them at the entrance, his expression grim. "Vandalism occurred between 2 and 4 a.m., he reported. "Security cameras were disabled remotely. Professional job. We're pulling footage from surrounding buildings, cross-referencing with known associates of people who might have motivation." "Adrian," Elena said quietly. "That's the working theory." Marcus glanced at Luca, who nodded. "We've had him under surveillance since the photos leaked. He met with someone yesterday. Unidentified male, cash exchange visible. We're running facial recognition now." "Show me the damage," Luca said. They walked to the ballroom, and Elena's heart sank. Red spray paint covered the walls she'd spent weeks designing, crude words and symbols defacing the space that was supposed to be beautiful. The message Luca had mentioned was spray-painted across the largest wall in letters 3 feet high. Elena stood in the center of the ruined room and felt rage replace the initial shock. This was someone trying to erase her work, to reduce everything she'd built to something shameful and dirty. It's paint, she said, her voice steady despite the fury burning in her chest. It can be cleaned. The walls can be repainted. The work continues. Luca moved to stand beside her. We can delay the schedule, give you time. No! Elena cut him off. That's what they want. For us to slow down, to question whether this is worth it. We don't slow down. We accelerate. Elena, I mean it, Luca. She turned to face him. I spent 3 years letting people make me small. I'm done. We clean this up, we finish the project, and we show everyone who tried to destroy this that they failed, that I'm stronger than their hate. Something blazed in Luca's eyes. Pride, possessiveness, heat. All right, we do it your way. But Elena... His voice dropped low enough that only she could hear. The people who did this will pay. I promise you that. I know. Marcus approached with his phone. We've got an ID on the man who met with Adrian Voss. Name's Kevin Brennan, hired muscle with a history of intimidation and minor assault. We're tracking his current location now. When you find him, Luca said calmly, arrange for a conversation, private. Convince him to tell us who hired him and what else was planned. And if he's reluctant to share, Luca's smile was cold. Then be persuasive, within legal limits, of course. Marcus nodded and disappeared. Elena knew she should probably be concerned about what persuasive meant in Luca's world, but she found she didn't care. Someone had tried to destroy her work, had tried to break her. They deserved whatever consequences came their way. The police finished their investigation by noon, taking statements and photographs, but offering little hope of finding the perpetrators through official channels. Elena suspected Luca's private security would be far more effective. She spent the afternoon with the construction crew, organizing the cleanup and replanning the schedule to minimize delays. By evening, the ballroom walls were being cleaned, and Elena had redesigned the timeline to actually finish 2 days earlier than originally planned. You're something else, Danny said, watching her coordinate 3 different contractor teams with calm efficiency. Most people would fall apart after something like this. You got scarier. Elena smiled grimly. I learned to be scary from an expert. She stayed at the site until nearly 8, making sure everything was on track. When she finally left, Marcus was waiting with the car. Mr. Moretti asked me to bring you to his office, Marcus said. He has information about the vandalism. Luca's office was dark except for the desk lamp when Elena arrived. He stood at the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, and turned when she entered. We found Kevin Brennan, he said without preamble. He admitted Adrian hired him to vandalize the site, paid him $5,000, promised 5 more if it successfully derailed the project. Did he admit to anything else? Adrian also hired the photographer who took our pictures, paid for the media placement, orchestrated the whole campaign. Luca's voice was utterly calm, which somehow made him seem more dangerous. He wanted to destroy your credibility, your reputation, everything you'd built, because he couldn't handle that you'd moved on and succeeded without him. Elena sank into a chair, processing. What happens now? Brennan is cooperating with police in exchange for a reduced sentence. Adrian will be charged with criminal mischief, harassment, and several other crimes that will likely result in jail time. Luca moved to crouch in front of her, taking her hands. He tried to destroy you, Elena, and he failed, because you're stronger than his petty revenge, stronger than his need to tear you down. I want to see him, Elena said suddenly, before he's arrested. I want him to know he didn't break me. Luca studied her face for a long moment. Are you sure? Completely. All right, I'll arrange it. The meeting happened 2 days later in a conference room at Moretti Holdings, with lawyers present and Marcus stationed outside. Adrian looked smaller than Elena remembered. Or maybe she'd just gotten bigger. He slouched in his chair, defensive and bitter, glaring at her with undisguised hatred. Satisfied? He spat. You've got everything you wanted. The rich boyfriend, the fancy job, me facing jail time. Hope it was worth destroying our marriage. Elena sat down across from him, her posture relaxed and confident. I didn't destroy our marriage, Adrian. You did. The moment you decided I wasn't enough, the moment you started sleeping with Jessica while I was home cooking your mother's recipes and paying half the rent. You never I never what? Noticed? Cared? Fought for us? Elena's smile was cold. You're right. I didn't fight. Because fighting would have required you to see me as worth fighting for, and you never did. I was convenient until I wasn't, a supporting character in your story. And now you're the lead in his. Adrian jerked his head toward where Luca stood near the window. You think he actually cares about you? You're a trophy, Elena. A possession he wanted because I had you first. That's where you're wrong. Elena leaned forward. Luca sees me, actually sees me. My talent, my potential, everything I'm capable of becoming. You saw a woman who would make herself smaller to accommodate your ego. Those aren't the same thing. So you're better than me now. Is that it? No, Adrian. I'm just done letting you define my worth. Elena stood. You tried to destroy my career because you couldn't handle that I succeeded after leaving you. You vandalized property, harassed me, tried to ruin my reputation. And you failed. Because I'm stronger than your hate. I always was. I just had to remember it. You'll regret this, Adrian said desperately. When he gets bored of you, when you realize you sold yourself for a job. I didn't sell anything. I earned everything I have. Elena moved toward the door, done with this conversation. Goodbye, Adrian. I hope prison gives you time to figure out who you are when you're not trying to tear down everyone around you. She walked out without looking back, Luca falling into step beside her. How do you feel? He asked quietly. Free, Elena said, and meant it. The Catherine Hartwell article ran the following week. The headline read, From Invisible to Invaluable, Elena Voss and the New Face of Design Leadership. The piece was exactly what Elena had hoped for. Professional, focused on her work and vision, presenting her as a talented designer who'd overcome obstacles rather than a woman who'd slept her way to success. The response was overwhelming. Interview requests poured in from design magazines and industry publications. 3 other developers reached out about potential projects. Elena's old design professors sent congratulatory emails. Even some of the gossip bloggers who'd initially attacked her wrote follow-ups acknowledging they'd been too quick to judge. The narrative was shifting, slowly but definitely. You did this, like Luca said, reading the article over her shoulder in his office. You changed the story by refusing to apologize for who you are. We did this, Elena corrected. I wouldn't have had the courage without you. Yes, you would have. It just might have taken longer. He kissed her temple. I'm proud of you, Elena. More than you know. The hotel project finished on schedule 2 weeks later. The final result was breathtaking. Every space flowing seamlessly into the next, elegant without being cold, luxurious without being ostentatious. The ballroom that had been vandalized was now the crown jewel of the entire property, and Elena made sure every photograph and press release mentioned that it had been targeted precisely because it threatened someone who couldn't handle her success. Let them see what happened when you tried to break her. Let them see what she built from the ashes. The night before the hotel's official opening gala, Luca took Elena to the empty ballroom. They stood in the center of the space, surrounded by the beauty she'd created, and he pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Elena Voss, he said, his voice carrying in the empty room. 3 months ago, you walked into my world invisible and convinced you deserved to be. You were wrong. You deserve everything, respect, recognition, love, all of it. And I want to spend my life making sure you never forget that again. He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the light and threw it back in brilliant fractured colors. Marry me. Not because you need me, but because we make each other better. Because you challenge me and I push you. Because together we're building something extraordinary. Elena looked at the ring, at Luca, at the ballroom that represented everything she'd fought to become. 6 months ago, she'd been drowning in invisibility. Now she was standing in a space she'd designed, with a man who saw her completely, being offered a future she'd never dared to imagine. Yes, she said through tears that were entirely happy. Yes, I'll marry you. Luca slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her in the center of the ballroom, and Elena felt the final pieces of her old life fall away. She wasn't Adrian's wife anymore, wasn't invisible anymore, wasn't small anymore. She was Elena Voss, designer, innovator, partner to a man who matched her strength and demanded she never settle for less than everything she deserved. She was finally, completely, herself. And she was never going back. The hotel's grand opening gala was everything Elena had envisioned and more. Manhattan's elite filled the ballroom she'd designed. Champagne, flowing beneath crystal chandeliers that threw prismatic light across walls that had once been defaced with hatred. Now those same walls gleamed with elegant textured panels, proving that beauty could rise from violence, that she could transform attack into triumph. Elena stood at Luca's side near the entrance, greeting guests, her engagement ring catching the light with every gesture. She wore a gown the color of midnight, silk that moved like water, designed specifically for tonight by a couturier who'd reached out after reading the Catherine Hartwell article. 6 months ago, she'd served champagne to people like this while invisible. Tonight they sought her out, congratulated her work, asked about future projects. "Ms. Voss, the space is extraordinary," said Margaret Castellano, the society matriarch whose party had started everything. "I'm hosting a fundraiser next spring. I'd like you to design the entire event experience, venue transformation, flow, everything." "I'd be honored," Elena said, meaning it. Gregory Castellano shook Luca's hand. "You found yourself a gem, Moretti." "My wife hasn't stopped talking about these spaces since the press preview. Best hotel renovation in Manhattan this decade, easy." I know exactly what I have," Luca said, his hand finding the small of Elena's back. The touch was possessive, proud, claiming her publicly in a way that would have terrified her 6 months ago. Now it just made her feel powerful. Victoria approached with champagne. The Times architectural critic just arrived. He's asking for a tour and he brought a photographer. "Perfect," Elena smiled. "Give me 5 minutes." She spent the next hour guiding journalists and industry leaders through the spaces she'd created, explaining design choices, answering technical questions with the confidence that came from knowing she was genuinely exceptional at this. No apologies, no minimizing her contributions, no crediting luck or circumstance. This was her work, her vision, her triumph. Around 10, Luca pulled her onto the terrace, the rooftop event space she'd redesigned completely, now a stunning expanse of glass and steel that framed the Manhattan skyline like a living photograph. "Dance with me," he said, pulling her close as the string quartet's music drifted through the open doors. Elena settled into his arms, swaying to the rhythm. "This is surreal. 6 months ago, I was serving drinks at parties like this." 6 months ago, you were already brilliant. You just didn't know it yet." Luca's hand tightened on her waist. "Or maybe you did know, and you'd just learned to hide it so well you almost believed your own performance. Adrian used to say my design ambitions were impractical, that I needed to focus on stable income, reliable work." Elena shook her head. "I can't believe I listened to him for so long." "People believe what they're told when they're told it enough times by people they trust." Luca's voice was matter-of-fact. "That's not weakness. That's human nature. What matters is what you do when you finally see the truth. I ran straight to you. You ran straight to yourself. I just happened to be standing in the right place at the right time, ready to see you." He spun her gently. "Although I prefer to think it was fate." Elena laughed. "Luca Moretti believes in fate?" "I believe in recognizing value when I see it. And I saw you." His expression turned serious. "I need to tell you something about the trip to Milan." "What about it?" "I want to introduce you to my family, my sister, extended cousins, everyone." Luca's eyes held hers. "In my family, bringing someone home means something. It's a statement about intentions, about permanence. Once I introduce you as my fiancé, there's no going back. My family doesn't do casual." "Good thing I don't do casual either." Elena touched his face. "I love you, Luca. I want to meet your family. I want to see where you came from, understand what shaped you, all of it." Something vulnerable flickered across Luca's features, rare for a man who controlled everything so completely. "I love you too, more than I knew I was capable of loving anyone." They kissed under the Manhattan stars, surrounded by the city that had almost broken Elena and instead became the place she finally found herself. When they returned inside, the party was in full swing, success evident in every conversation, every impressed face, every photograph being taken of the spaces Elena had created. Marcus appeared near midnight, his expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Moretti, there's someone here to see you. He's insisting it's urgent." "Who?" "Carlo Santini." The name meant nothing to Elena, but Luca's entire body went rigid. His hand tightened on her waist almost painfully before he forced himself to relax. "Tell him I'll meet him in the private office. 10 minutes. Luca's voice was ice. Marcus nodded and disappeared. Elena looked at Luca, seeing tension in every line of his body. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Business. Nothing you need to worry about." But his jaw was tight, his eyes scanning the crowd with sudden wariness. "Luca." Elena gripped his arm. "Don't shut me out. You said we were partners. That means the bad stuff too, not just the celebrations." He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Carlo Santini is a business rival from Milan. Old family, older money, and a very long grudge about a deal my father made 20 years ago. He's tried multiple times to undermine Moretti Holdings in Europe. If he's here, in New York, at my hotel opening, it's not social." "What does he want?" "Probably to threaten me with something. It's his style, appear at public events, make veiled warnings, try to intimidate." Luca's smile was sharp. "It never works, but he keeps trying. I'm coming with you." "Elena." "Partners," she repeated firmly. "Whatever this is, we face it together." Luca looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. "All right. But you stay back, you don't engage directly, and if I tell you to leave, you leave immediately. Agreed?" "Agreed." They made their way to the private office off the main lobby, a small, elegant space meant for hotel management meetings. Carlo Santini waited inside, a man in his 60s with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. 2 men flanked him, clearly security. "Luca!" Santini's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Congratulations on the hotel. It's almost enough to make me forget how your father stole the Milan property that should have been my family's legacy. My father bought that property legally through public auction. Your family simply couldn't afford to compete." Luca's voice was pleasant, which somehow made him seem more dangerous. "What do you want, Carlo?" "To give you a warning, actually. Professional courtesy." Santini's gaze slid to Elena. "Who's this?" "None of your concern." "Ah, but she is my concern. You see, I've been reading about Ms. Voss in the papers. Quite the Cinderella story. Invisible server becomes celebrated designer through the grace of a powerful man." His smile turned cruel. "Reminds me of other women who've tried to cling to the Moretti name for advancement. Your father's first wife, for instance. She didn't end well, did she?" Luca's expression went deadly calm. "You have 30 seconds to state your business before I have you removed." "My business is simple. I'm expanding into the American market. Several of your hotel properties would make excellent acquisition targets. I'm offering you the chance to sell them to me directly, at fair market value, before I'm forced to pursue more aggressive tactics." "Not interested." "That's unfortunate. Because I should mention, I've been doing research on your lovely fiancé. Such an interesting background. Rushed marriage to a man who's now facing jail time for vandalism and harassment. Divorce finalized suspiciously quickly with help from your lawyers. Employment contract signed days after meeting you." Santini's eyes glittered. One might wonder what other corners were cut, what other rules were bent to facilitate this fairy tale romance. Elena felt her blood run cold, but Luca's expression didn't change. "You have 15 seconds left. I'm just saying it would be very easy to open investigations into Mrs. Voss's hiring practices, your involvement in her divorce, the remarkably convenient timeline of events. The kind of investigations that generate headlines, raise questions about business ethics, damage reputations, all of which could be avoided if you're reasonable about the hotel properties." Luca checked his watch. "Time's up. Marcus?" The door opened. Marcus appeared with 2 additional security personnel. "Mr. Santini is leaving," Luca said calmly. "Escort him out. Make sure he understands he's not welcome at any Moretti property, in any city, ever again." "You're making a mistake," Santini said as security moved toward him. "I will destroy everything you're building with her. Every achievement she's earned will be questioned, every project scrutinized, every—" "You're done talking." Luca's voice cracked like a whip. "Here's what's going to happen, Carlo. You're going to leave New York tonight. You're going to abandon whatever plans you had to expand into my markets. And you're going to pray, I never decide to take an interest in your European holdings, because if I do, I will dismantle them piece by piece until there's nothing left of the Santini name but debts and regrets. You can't threaten me. That wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. Luca stepped closer, and even though Santini had security, even though he outweighed Luca by 40 pounds, he actually stepped back. I've tolerated your grudges for years because dismantling you would have been more effort than you were worth. But you made a critical error tonight. You threatened Elena, and anyone who threatens what's mine learns very quickly that there are fates worse than bankruptcy. Santini's face had gone pale. You're insane. I'm focused. There's a difference. Luca nodded to Marcus. Get him out of my sight. Security escorted Santini and his men out. The moment the door closed, Luca turned to Elena, his expression shifting from lethal to concerned in an instant. Are you all right? Elena realized she was shaking, not with fear exactly, but with adrenaline and fury. He threatened to destroy my reputation, everything I've built. He threatened to try. He won't succeed. Luca pulled her close. Elena, I need you to trust me. Carlo Santini is a bully who's built a career on intimidation and inherited wealth. He has no real power here, no ability to follow through on those threats. It was all bluster. But what if he does open investigations? What if he finds some technicality in how I was hired, or there are no technicalities? Everything was done properly, legally, with full documentation. You were hired because you're extraordinary at what you do. The timeline might have been fast, but fast doesn't mean improper. Luca cupped her face. He can't hurt you, Elena. I won't let him. You can't control everything. Watch me. Elena wanted to argue, but the absolute certainty in Luca's eyes stopped her. This was a man who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd survived challenges that would have destroyed weaker people. If he said Carlo Santini wasn't a real threat, she believed him. What happens now? She asked. Now we go back to the party, we celebrate your triumph, and we let everyone see that petty threats don't touch us. Luca kissed her forehead. Tomorrow I'll make some calls. By the end of the week, Carlo will be too busy trying to save his own business to worry about ours. They returned to the gala, and if anyone noticed the tension in Luca's shoulders or the protective way he kept Elena close, they were too polite to mention it. The party continued until nearly 2 a.m, a resounding success by every measure. But when Elena finally collapsed into bed at Luca's penthouse, exhaustion hitting her like a wave, she couldn't shake the echo of Santini's threats. What did he mean about your father's first wife? She asked in the darkness. Luca was quiet for a long moment. My father married young before he built the business. She was from an ambitious family who saw him as a way to access wealth and status. When it became clear the relationship was one-sided, that she saw him as a resource rather than a partner, he divorced her. She tried to destroy him legally, professionally, personally. It got ugly. What happened to her? She remarried within 6 months to someone wealthier. Last I heard, she's on her 4th husband. Luca's arm tightened around Elena. The point Carlo was making is that the Moretti men have a history of being targeted by women seeking advancement. He was trying to plant doubt, make me question your motives. And did it work? No. Absolute certainty. Because you're nothing like her. You don't need me for advancement. You're capable of achieving anything on your own. You're with me because we fit, because we make each other better. I know the difference. Elena turned to face him in the darkness. Promise me something. Anything. If Carlo does manage to cause problems, if investigations happen, or questions get raised about my hiring, you let me handle it. You don't swoop in trying to fix everything. Elena, I mean it, Luca. I need to prove I can weather attacks on my own, that I'm strong enough to stand beside you, not just hide behind you. She gripped his hand. I know you want to protect me, but protection can become a cage if I'm not careful. I need to fight my own battles. Luca was silent, processing. Finally, all right, with one condition. What? You let me help strategize. You don't have to fight alone, even if you fight your own battles. Partners, remember? Elena smiled in the darkness. Partners. They fell asleep tangled together, and if Elena's dreams were troubled by threats and questions, she woke to Luca's steady presence and remembered she was strong enough to handle whatever came next. The following week proved Luca's prediction correct. Carlo Santini's European holdings came under sudden scrutiny from Italian regulators investigating tax irregularities. Business partners who'd worked with him for years suddenly found better opportunities elsewhere. Properties he'd planned to acquire were purchased by competitors at the last minute. Luca never explicitly claimed credit for any of it, but the message was clear: threaten what's mine, and there are consequences. Elena focused on work. 3 new project offers came in off the hotel's success: a restaurant redesign, a luxury apartment building lobby, and a boutique hotel in Brooklyn. She accepted all 3, hiring her first junior designer to help manage the workload. Slowly, carefully, she was building her own firm, her own reputation independent of Luca's name. 2 weeks after the gala, they flew to Milan. The city was everything Luca had promised. Ancient beauty mixed with modern sophistication, narrow streets opening onto grand piazzas, churches that had stood for centuries alongside cutting-edge fashion houses. Luca's family home was in a historic building near the Duomo, all stone and wrought iron, and the kind of generational wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Sofia Moretti met them at the door. Luca's sister, 32, with her brother's dark eyes and a sharp wit that Elena immediately loved. She pulled Elena into a hug before Luca could make formal introductions. "Finally, someone who might make my brother less insufferable," Sofia said in perfect English, touched with Italian accent. Come in, come in. Nonna's been cooking for 2 days. She's convinced you're too thin." "Nonna?" Elena looked at Luca, confused. "I thought your grandmother passed away." "My father's mother did, but my mother's mother is very much alive and very much in charge of this family." Luca smiled, something soft and genuine. "Fair warning, she's going to interrogate you, judge your character, and decide within 10 minutes whether you're worthy of the Moretti name. There's no preparing for it. Just be yourself." The grandmother in question was a tiny woman in her 80s with eyes that missed nothing, and the kind of presence that made Elena understand exactly where Luca had learned his commanding authority. She looked Elena up and down once, said something rapid in Italian to Luca, then pulled Elena into her arms. "Bianca says you have strong eyes," Sofia translated, grinning. "That's Nonna's way of saying she approves. You survived the first test." Dinner was an overwhelming blur of cousins and extended family, all talking over each other in Italian while pressing food on Elena and asking questions about America and her work and how she'd tamed Luca, who they all agreed had been unbearably serious since taking over the company at 18. The love in the room was palpable, chaotic and warm, and nothing like Elena's own distant family. Later, after everyone had left and it was just Luca, Elena, Sofia, and Bianca sharing wine on the terrace, the grandmother spoke in halting English. "Your eyes, they were sad when you arrived," Bianca said, studying Elena. "But now, talking about your work, about the spaces you create, they glow. This is good. My Luca needs someone who has fire of their own, not someone who lives only in his shadow." "I'm working on remembering my fire," Elena admitted. "It was buried for a while. Fire doesn't disappear. It just waits for oxygen." Bianca patted her hand. "You have oxygen now. Let yourself burn." Sofia raised her wine glass. "To Elena, who's either brave enough or crazy enough to join this family. I haven't decided which yet." "Both," Luca said, smiling. "Definitely both." They spent a week in Milan and Elena fell completely in love with the city. Luca showed her his favorite childhood places: the gelateria where his grandmother had taken him every Sunday, the park where he'd learned to ride a bike, the university where he'd studied before his father's death had pulled him into business years ahead of schedule. She met more family members than she could keep track of, all of whom welcomed her with the same chaotic warmth. On their last evening, Luca took her to a small church on the outskirts of the city where his parents were buried. They stood in the quiet cemetery as the sun set, and Elena held his hand while he told stories about the father who'd built an empire and the mother who'd died too young from cancer. "They would have loved you," Luca said quietly. "My mother especially. She always said the measure of a person was what they built after everything was taken away. You built yourself back into something extraordinary. She would have respected that." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the weight of the week, the acceptance, the love, the sense of belonging to something larger than herself. "Thank you for bringing me here, for sharing all of this with me." This is your family now, too. These stories, these places, all of it. Luca turned to face her. I want to marry you here, in Milan, in the church where my parents married, with all of this chaos and love surrounding us. What do you think? Elena's heart swelled. I think that sounds perfect. They returned to New York, engaged not just to each other, but to the entire Moretti family legacy, which felt both terrifying and right. Elena threw herself into wedding planning while managing her 3 new projects, somehow finding balance between the professional demands and the personal joy. 4 months after the hotel opening, the Brooklyn boutique hotel Elena had designed won a prestigious architecture and design award. She accepted it at a ceremony attended by the industry's elite, standing at a podium in a room full of people who'd once looked through her and thanked everyone who'd supported her vision, including Luca, who she credited with giving her the opportunity to prove herself but not with her success, which was entirely her own. The standing ovation felt like vindication. Adrian's trial happened quietly, resulting in a guilty plea and 6 months in a minimum security facility. Elena didn't attend. She'd already moved so far past that chapter of her life that his consequences felt like closing a book she'd finished reading months ago. The wedding took place in Milan the following spring, exactly 1 year after Elena had served champagne at the Castellano party and locked eyes with a dangerous man across a crowded ballroom. The ceremony was beautiful, intimate, despite the 100 guests, traditional while honoring both Italian and American customs, full of the kind of joy that came from 2 people who'd found each other against all odds. Elena wore a dress designed by the same couturier who'd made her gala gown, walked down the aisle to a string quartet playing contemporary classical music, and married Luca surrounded by his family, who'd become hers. Sofia served as her maid of honor. Bianca cried through the entire ceremony. Victoria, who'd become an unexpected friend, caught the bouquet and immediately threatened to throw it back. At the reception, held at a restored villa in the Lombardy countryside, Elena danced with her new husband and felt the final pieces of her old life fall away completely. She wasn't Adrian's wife, wasn't invisible, wasn't someone who made herself small to fit into spaces that were too cramped for her dreams. She was Elena Moretti, designer, entrepreneur, wife to a man who'd seen her completely and loved what he found. She was powerful and talented and absolutely certain of her worth. "What are you thinking?" Luca asked, spinning her gently. "That a year ago I thought my life was over, that I'd made irrevocable mistakes and would spend forever paying for them." Elena smiled up at him. "And now I'm here, with you, building the life I was always meant to have. No regrets? Only that I didn't find the courage to leave sooner, that I wasted 3 years being small when I could have been extraordinary. Those 3 years made you who you are." Luca pulled her closer. "Everything you survived, everything you learned about yourself in the breaking, it's all part of what makes you magnificent now. I wouldn't change it." Elena supposed he was right. The pain had been necessary. The invisibility had taught her what she never wanted to be again. The breaking had revealed what she was made of underneath all the compromises and accommodations. 6 months after the wedding, Elena's design firm had grown to 5 employees and a waiting list of clients. She'd been featured in Architectural Digest, invited to speak at her design school's commencement, and approached about writing a book on creating spaces that honored both function and beauty. Every success was hers, earned through talent and vision and relentless work. Luca continued building his empire, with Elena now serving as occasional consultant on his hotel properties. They were partners in every sense, professionally complementary, personally devoted, building something together that was stronger than what either could create alone. They bought a townhouse in the West Village, decorated it with the kind of careful thought Elena brought to all her spaces, and filled it with art and books and the life they were creating together. On quiet evenings, they cooked dinner in the kitchen where Luca taught Elena his grandmother's recipes, and Elena taught him that not everything needed to be controlled, that sometimes the best moments were the unplanned ones. 2 years after they'd met, Elena stood in the completed ballroom of her Brooklyn hotel project, her first independent commission from start to finish, and felt the overwhelming satisfaction of creation. The space was perfect, every detail exactly as she'd envisioned, proof that she could build beauty on her own terms. Luca found her there, standing in the center of the empty room, and wrapped his arms around her from behind. "What are you feeling?" he asked. Elena thought about the girl who'd been invisible, the woman who'd broken free, the designer who'd learned to own her brilliance, the wife who'd found partnership that elevated rather than diminished. Complete, she said finally. For the first time in my life, I feel complete. Good, Luca kissed her temple. Because you are. Everything you were always meant to be, powerful, brilliant, absolutely impossible to overlook. Elena turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd seen her when no one else did, who'd offered her opportunity but demanded she earn her success, who'd loved her fiercely while insisting she stand on her own strength. I love you, she said. Thank you for never letting me be invisible. I love you too, and you were never invisible, Elena. You were just waiting for permission to be seen. I'm glad I was there when you finally gave yourself that permission. They stood together in the ballroom, surrounded by the beauty Elena had created, and she knew with absolute certainty that this was what happiness felt like. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. Not being rescued, but being recognized. Not finding completion in another person, but finding a partner who celebrated the completeness she'd built herself. She'd started this journey hollow and invisible, trapped in a marriage that was killing her slowly. She'd ended it powerful and seen, building a life that exceeded her wildest dreams. And she'd done it by finally, completely, refusing to be anything less than everything she was capable of becoming. Elena Moretti was no longer invisible. She was inevitable, and that made all the difference.